But what I'm actually talking about is the fact that Ms. Markle herself should be afraid, because I can reveal Tom Bower, who has been working on the sequel to Revenge for some time, has secured a big money serialization deal with Rupert Murdoch's News UK, specifically the Times newspaper, but I believe it may also extend to the Sun newspaper too.
Breaking news this morning, Wednesday, June 11th, 2026. We are witnessing what can only be described as a calculated psychological diversion unfolding in real time. Look closely at your screens. This black and white photograph, released just moments ago from the gates of a $14 million Montecito mansion, is not the peaceful lifestyle update it claims to be. It is a theatrical, almost frantic display of a woman attempting to outrun a storm that has finally made landfall. The image shows Meghan cradling a bowl of raspberries, her face fixed in an exaggerated, wide-eyed smile that many critics are calling performative joy. It is a Valentine's-themed aesthetic, delivered in the heat of June, a jarring disconnect from reality. But why now? Why this sudden obsession with strawberry jam and domestic bliss? To understand the panic behind that smile, we have to look at what was happening behind the scenes at exactly 9:45 a.m. this morning. While the public was distracted by the curated grain of a black and white filter, a much grimmer reality was solidified in London. Legal representatives for News United Kingdom were seen finalising the final terms of a disclosure agreement with investigative titan Tom Bower. The timing is not a coincidence. This bizarre photo shoot is a curated defense mechanism, a wall of jam and raspberries built to mask a state of extreme institutional panic. Think about the sheer effort required to maintain this facade. Sources within the Montecito circle describe a house under siege, not by protesters, but by the weight of its own narrative. One staffer reportedly overheard a tense exchange in the kitchen as the photo was being staged. The narrative voice recalls Meghan telling her creative team, "It has to look effortless. It has to look like I am at peace while they are at war. If the world sees me smiling at a bowl of fruit, they won't look at the legal filings." This is the psychological breaking point. When the pressure of reality becomes too great, the PR machine pivots to the surreal. This isn't just a photo, it is a shield. By projecting the image of a peaceful, powerful woman unbothered by the global headlines, she is attempting to micromanage the public's perception of her mental state. However, the cracks are visible, the smile doesn't reach the eyes, and the staged nature of the candid moment feels more like a cry for help than a lifestyle brand launch. For those of you watching right now, ask yourself, why is a bowl of fruit being treated like a state secret? Why is the domesticity so aggressive? We are seeing the strawberry jam smokescreen in its purest form. It is a tactic designed to trigger a specific response, curiosity about a product to drown out the noise of a collapsing reputation. As we analyze these high-stakes movements on this 11th day of June, we want to hear your immediate thoughts. Does this look like a woman at peace, or a woman performing for her life? Drop a comment below right now with the words staged or genuine. We are reading every single one to see where the public pulse lies. If you want to stay ahead of the breaking updates as the Tom Bower documents are unsealed, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Don't forget to like this video to help us keep this investigation live. The contrast is staggering. On one side of the Atlantic, lawyers are poring over documents that could dismantle a decade of carefully crafted stories. On the other side, in a sun-drenched California kitchen, a woman is meticulously placing raspberries in a bowl, ensuring the lighting highlights her serenity. One insider recounted the atmosphere during the shoot, stating that the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The voiceover narration of the scene describes Meghan adjusting her posture over and over, whispering to an assistant, "They need to see that I am happy. The more they attack, the more I will smile." Ensure the brand is the only thing they talk about tomorrow. But the brand is no longer just jam. The brand has become the mask itself. This is an extreme defensive posture. When the truth becomes too heavy to carry, you start selling a fantasy. The $14 million walls of Montecito can no longer keep the reality of the legal world out. As the clock ticks toward the afternoon session in the London courts, this black and white image remains the only official response from the Sussex camp. It is a silent, smiling defiance that masks a terrifying realization. The smoke is clearing, and the jam isn't enough to hide the fire. Stay tuned as we break down the next hour of this developing story. While the world was distracted by the black and white images of a quiet life in California, a much more formidable structure was being erected in the heart of London's media district. This is not just another collection of rumors or a tabloid's fleeting headline. What we are witnessing on this Wednesday, June 11th, is the deployment of what experts call the ladder of authority. It is a three-tiered fortress of credibility that makes the Montecito PR machine look like a house of cards, and it is designed to be indestructible. At the base of this ladder, the first tier is the sheer financial and logistical scale of the big money serialization deal. In the high-stakes world of international publishing, money follows the truth that can be proven in a court of law. This isn't a blog post or a self-published memoir. This is a massive commitment where millions of dollars have been staked on the accuracy of Tom Bower's findings. An insider close to the negotiations was heard describing the atmosphere in the boardroom as the deal was inked. We aren't just looking for sensationalism anymore. We are looking for the receipts that have been buried for 5 years. This deal ensures every single one of those receipts sees the light of day, piece by piece, day after day, until the entire picture is clear. Moving up to the second tier, we see the institutional power players involved. This is where the chessboard becomes truly fascinating and perhaps a bit terrifying for those in the Montecito mansion. Usually, the British press operates as a fragmented front, but a massive shift occurred behind closed doors recently. Because the Daily Mail is currently entangled in its own complex litigation at the London High Court, they were forced to step back from this specific bidding war. This was not a retreat of weakness, but a clearing of the path. This unexpected move left News United Kingdom, specifically The Times and The Sun, with a total monopoly on the Bower files. The Times is the most prestigious newspaper of record in the English-speaking world. By securing this monopoly, they have moved the conversation from the realm of gossip into the realm of historical record. A senior editor was overheard saying during a strategy meeting, "The Daily Mail being occupied is the best thing that could have happened for the integrity of this release." Now, there is no noise. There is only the record. There is nowhere for the defense to hide when the paper of the establishment is the one holding the documents. But the most devastating level of this ladder, the third tier that creates that cold feeling of finality, is the legal vetting. On this 11th day of June, every sentence and every named source in this serialization has already passed through the most grueling legal filters in the corporate world. This is bulletproof journalism. The lawyers at News United Kingdom have spent months cross-referencing every claim against sworn statements and physical evidence. A narrative account of a conversation between a legal analyst and a high-level publicist reveals the gravity of the situation. The analyst reportedly stated, "You cannot sue a fact that has already been verified by a Tier 1 legal team. If it is printed in the Times under this specific deal, it means they have the proof to win in court before the first copy even hits the newsstands." The Sussex legal strategy has hit a brick wall of pre-vetted truth. This is why the strawberry jam defense feels so small today. How do you fight a document that has already been cleared by the highest legal minds in the industry? As the clock ticks toward the first digital release of the serialized chapters, the silence from the official Sussex spokespeople is deafening. The monopoly held by the Times means the narrative is no longer under Montecito's control. The curtain is being pulled back, and what lies behind the first few pages is said to be transformative for the public's understanding of why they really left. The world is waiting, watching the digital countdown, wondering what could be so undeniable that even the most aggressive legal teams are forced to stay silent. The precision we are witnessing today is not accidental. It is the execution of a cold, three-step protocol that media insiders often refer to as the media assassin mechanism. As the clock ticks past 11 a.m. on this 11th day of June, it is becoming clear that Tom Bower is not just releasing a book, he is dismantling a brand with surgical accuracy. This isn't a random surge of information, it is a calculated sequence designed to bypass every defensive measure the Montecito team has spent years building. The first phase of this mechanism is what we call trace collection. For months, while the public saw nothing but silence, Bower was reportedly operating in the shadows of Hollywood and London. He wasn't looking for headlines, he was looking for expiration dates. Specifically, the expiration of non-disclosure agreements. Sources suggest Bower has been in constant contact with former public relations staff, individuals like Meredith Maines and other high-level Hollywood consultants who were once bound by ironclad contracts. Imagine the scene in a high-rise office in Los Angeles just weeks ago. A former staffer sits across from a legal team, a stack of documents between them. The narrative account of this moment describes a palpable sense of relief. The staffer reportedly said, "For 4 years, I had to keep these logs. I had to record every demand, every late-night phone call, and every contradiction. Now that the contract has lapsed, the truth doesn't belong to the palace or the mansion anymore. It belongs to the record." By gathering these fragmented pieces of data from people who finally have the legal right to speak, Bower has constructed a cross-referenced map of evidence that is nearly impossible to refute. The second phase is even more ruthless. Drip distribution. This is the reason for the dual contract with both the Times and the Sunday. By splitting the manuscript and distributing it across two vastly different media platforms, Bower has created a domino effect of public opinion. If the Sussex legal team attempts to file a single injunction to stop the release, they find themselves fighting a multi-front war. A digital strategy expert recently explained this pincer movement. The voiceover of their analysis suggests a grim reality for the defense. You can't sue the entire internet at once. By the time you file a complaint against a chapter in the Times, a completely different revelation has already gone viral through the Sunday. It's a flood that no single legal dam can hold back. They are being forced to react to a new crisis every hour, leaving them no time to coordinate a unified counterattack. This is why the raspberry photos and the jam labels feel so outmatched. They are trying to fight a tidal wave with a teaspoon. This leads us to the final, most devastating phase. The unmasking. This is the moment where the mechanism forces the public to look at the gap between the public statement and the behind-the-scenes action. We are now seeing reports of specific instances where humanitarian slogans were reportedly used to mask aggressive commercial maneuvers. The question being whispered in the hallways of major talent agencies today is no longer about if the stories are true, but why the stories are so consistent. This consistent narrative of manipulation is being cited as the primary reason for Hollywood's profound and silent rejection of the couple. One prominent producer was overheard saying at a pre-summer gala, "In this town, you can be difficult, but you cannot be caught in a contradiction of your own making." The Bower files don't just tell us what happened, they explain why nobody wants to pick up the phone anymore. As the afternoon updates prepare to drop, one has to wonder, when the mask finally falls away completely, what will be left of the image that was so carefully curated in the California sun? The mechanism is in motion, and it shows no signs of slowing down. As the clock strikes 1:15 p.m., here on this intense Wednesday, June 11th, 2026, we have received confirmation of a departure that signals the total internal collapse of the Sussex brand. Meredith Maines, a heavyweight PR strategist brought in to salvage the crumbling image of Archwell, has officially resigned. In the high-stakes world of crisis management, executives of this caliber do not quit over a single mistake or a bad headline. They quit when the foundation they are standing on is built entirely of shifting sand. The departure of Maines is not just a resignation, It is a flight from a sinking ship. Insiders describe a workplace environment defined by chronic firefighting. For years, the team was tasked with dousing the flames of one public relations disaster after another, only to find that the sparks were being lit from within. A narrative account of Maine's final hours at the office reveals a woman pushed to her absolute limit. She was reportedly heard telling a close associate, "I was hired to manage a reputation, not to invent a new reality every Tuesday." You cannot ask a professional to spin a web of lies when the world has already seen the spider. This resignation is the definitive neo-reality check. It proves that the strawberry jam and raspberry bowl diversions we saw earlier this morning were not just poorly timed, they were the final straws for a professional who realized that the victimhood narrative has finally become a toxic asset. When a top-tier expert walks away, it's a signal to the entire industry that the brand is no longer manageable. But the isolation doesn't stop at the office doors. It has permeated the very top of the Hollywood social hierarchy, manifesting in what is now being called the Kardashian photogate. In recent months, we've seen a chilling freezing out from the most powerful family in American media. The subtle, sarcastic eye rolls and the deliberate public distancing from Kim and Khloe Kardashian are not mere personal slights. They are a professional verdict from the elite. The Kardashians represent a specific, pragmatic brand of power. They have built a multi-billion-dollar empire on the principle of self-made labor and relentless branding. In their world, power is earned through work, not through the constant exploitation of royal titles or the perpetual airing of grievances. A source close to the family's production circle recounted a chillingly brief exchange regarding a potential collaboration. The voiceover of that moment captures the cold reality. Kim doesn't see a partner in Meghan, she sees a liability. She was overheard saying, "We sell products, they sell problems. Our brands don't mix." This highlights the profound psychological divide. There is a palpable sense of indignation within the Hollywood elite toward the victimhood business model. They see a woman who is reportedly deeply jealous of the self-made billionaire status of figures like Kim Kardashian, yet lacks the business acumen or the resilience to build something equivalent from the ground up. Instead of a business empire, we see a trail of abandoned projects and resigned staff. The Kardashian photogate was the final public unmasking. It showed the world that even the most famous women in America have drawn a clear line in the sand. They are choosing pragmatic power over manufactured drama. As we look at the empty offices of Archwell and the cold shoulders of Hollywood, the question is no longer about the next PR stunt. The question is, when the elite stop calling and the professionals stop working, what is left of the dream? The silence from the Montecito mansion is growing, and for the first time, it feels like the world is no longer waiting for their answer, they've already moved on. The strawberry jam curtain has fallen, and the stage behind it is completely empty. As the sun begins to set on this historic Wednesday, June 11th, 2026, the atmosphere within the British monarchy has shifted from a state of quiet concern to one of absolute, ironclad resolve. While King Charles III continues to host a glittering, legacy-focused movie premiere at Windsor Castle, a desperate attempt to maintain a sense of traditional continuity, a much more significant power move is unfolding in the shadows. We are witnessing the rise of the steel boundary, orchestrated not by the king, but by Prince William. For years, the public has watched as the royal family appeared to waver, caught between the sentimentality of a father and the institutional duty of a monarch. But as of today, that era of hesitation is officially over. Reports have surfaced that Prince William has taken the unprecedented step of signing a strategic partnership with Edelman Public Relations. This is not a standard branding move. Edelman is the world's most formidable titan of crisis management, known for handling high-stakes geopolitical shifts and corporate warfare. The message is clear. William is no longer playing defense. He is establishing a professional firewall that effectively isolates the Montecito narrative once and for all. A source close to the Prince of Wales described a tense briefing at Kensington Palace earlier this week. The narrative voiceover of that exchange reveals a prince who has finally reached his limit. William reportedly told his senior aides, "The era of cleaning up messes we didn't create is finished. The crown is a symbol of stability, not a crisis center for those who chose to burn their own house down. From this day forward, we do not respond, we do not engage, we simply exist beyond their reach. This is the steel boundary in action." William's deliberate absence from the King's cinematic event at Windsor today was the definitive cold signal. It was a refusal to participate in the old way of managing the Sussex problem. While the King might still feel the pull of familial ties, William is looking at the next 50 years of the monarchy. By hiring Edelman, he has signaled that the Sussexes are no longer a family matter, they are a reputational risk that has been successfully contained and quarantined. The satisfaction for many observers today comes from the realization that the Sussexes have been left to face the Tom Bower revelations completely alone. For the first time since their departure, there are no royal lawyers being dispatched to clarify or soften the blows landing from the London press. William has essentially removed the royal shield. One palace insider recounted a conversation where the prince was asked about the impending Bower chapters. His response was chillingly brief. They chose their own story. Let them defend it. This strategic isolation is the ultimate power move. It renders the victimhood narrative powerless because there is no longer an active oppressor to fight against. There is only a cold, professional silence. The media tyranny of the Sussexes, as some have called it, relied on the palace's reaction to fuel its fire. By cutting off the oxygen of a response, William has left them gasping for relevance in a vacuum. As the London evening sets in, the contrast is stark. In California, we see a woman smiling at a bowl of fruit for a camera. In London, we see a future king building a professional fortress that ensures that smile never penetrates the palace walls again. The steel boundary isn't just about silence, it's about the finality of a choice. The world is watching, realizing that the most effective way to win a war of words is to simply stop listening. What happens next? When the silence becomes the only answer they ever receive. The documents are still being unsealed, and for the first time, the Sussexes are finding out exactly how cold it is when the royal shadow is pulled away. The clock is ticking louder than ever. It is currently the 11th of June, 2026, and we are now exactly 72 hours away from a media event that could permanently alter the landscape of the British monarchy and the American celebrity machine. In 3 days, the Times will release the first chapter of the Tom Bower serialization, and the tension in both London and Montecito has reached a fever pitch. This is the Endgame. The News United Kingdom machinery is fully loaded, the legal teams have stepped back, and the world is holding its breath. To understand what is about to happen, we have to look at the scenario tree for the next 72 hours. There are 3 paths this story could take, and each one carries massive consequences for the residents of that $14 million mansion. The first path, which many skeptics fear, is the rehash scenario. In this version of events, the book only offers a collection of old stories and recycled tabloid rumors. If this happens, it gives the Sussex camp a massive opening to once again play the role of the victim, claiming they are being bullied by an obsessed British press. However, insiders suggest this is the least likely outcome. Tom Bower does not gamble his reputation on old news. The second, and most realistic path, is the institutional betrayal. This scenario involves Bower exposing internal files and communications that prove a deep-seated hypocrisy within their charitable and commercial ventures. We are talking about documents that show exactly how charity was used as a front for branding. If this evidence is as strong as reported, the fallout won't be a loud explosion, but a cold, silent abandonment. We are already seeing the signs. Major brands like Netflix and Lemonade are reportedly watching these developments with their legal teams on standby. A narrative account of a recent strategy meeting at a major streaming service describes a grim atmosphere. An executive was overheard saying, We aren't waiting for a scandal, we are waiting for the data. If Bauer proves the brand is built on a lie, our contract has a morality clause for a reason. We don't need to fire them, we just need to let the contract expire in silence. This is the most brutal form of cancellation, the slow, quiet exit from the global stage. The third and most explosive path is the financial nuclear option. This involves the publication of undeniable financial records that could force the hand of the British Parliament or investigative agencies. We are talking about evidence so significant that it bypasses public opinion and enters the realm of legal consequence, potentially leading to the formal stripping of titles. A narrated scene from within the Montecito camp captures the desperation of this 72-hour window. A source describes Harry pacing in his study, staring at a calendar marked for the 14th of June. He reportedly turned to a staff member and asked, "How much do they actually have? Is it just the staff logs, or did they get the bank records too?" The silence that followed was more telling than any statement could ever be. The paper empire is trembling. With the News United Kingdom machinery fully loaded and the clock ticking down from this morning of June 11th, the Madam of Montecito is running out of places to hide. The media verdict has already been drafted, and the evidence is about to be unsealed. But the ultimate question remains. In these final 72 hours, will Harry finally wake up to the reality of the situation before their carefully constructed world collapses entirely? Or will he go down with the ship, clutching a jar of jam as the waves close in? The truth is coming, and it is coming fast. You cannot afford to miss what happens when the first chapter drops. This is the moment where the narrative is taken out of their hands forever. To ensure you are the first to receive the full, declassified analysis of the Tom Bauer files the second they are released, you need to act now. Subscribe to the Royal Insider Network and hit that notification bell. We will be providing hour-by-hour updates as this 72-hour countdown expires. Don't let the smoke and mirrors of the strawberry jam defense distract you from the facts. Stay tuned to the Royal Insider Network. The truth is about to be unsealed. 2342. Late last night, April 28, 2026, while the rest of the world slept, a convoy of 4 unmarked black SUVs departed from the rear gates of Buckingham Palace, bypassing the usual media checkpoints. Their destination, Sandringham House. There was no official press release, no social media updates. This was a total communications blackout, triggered by a woman who has spent her entire life protecting the throne's darkest secrets. Princess Anne. The atmosphere at Sandringham was not one of a family gathering, but of a high-stakes military briefing. This was the emergency meeting of the core family council. The setting was room 1844. A place historically reserved for the most significant diplomatic encounters. Under the dim, flickering light of a gold-leaf chandelier, a thick, cream-colored envelope sat on the mahogany table. It bore the unmistakable red wax seal of the late Queen Elizabeth II. But this is not a letter of sentimental memories. Our investigation into the palace's legal archives suggests we are looking at a document coded as Echo to India, Legacy 2022. This is a supplemental constitutional memorandum, a legal failsafe drafted by the late Queen in the final months of her life. Most observers believed the line of succession was set in stone. They were wrong. This document contains a specific stability trigger. According to our sources, the mechanism is precise. If the successor fails to maintain a defined threshold of public stability within 36 months of their reign, the Crown's administrative power must be reallocated. We are now exactly at that 36-month mark. Before we dive deeper into the contents of this dossier, if you believe the truth about the monarchy should be transparent, hit the like button right now and subscribe. Your support allows us to keep tracking these classified movements. Comment protocol below if you think the late Queen was right to have a backup plan. The room was suffocatingly quiet when Princess Anne finally broke the seal. According to those close to the event, Anne did not offer a greeting. She simply laid the document flat, and stated that she was there as the executor of their mother's final command, not as a sister or an aunt. She informed King Charles and Prince William that the Queen's ciphers were never meant to be suggestions. They were binding instructions designed to prevent the total collapse of the Windsor brand. The voiceover accounts of the dialogue that followed describe a scene of unprecedented tension. King Charles reportedly looked at the paper, his hands trembling slightly as he read the 36-month assessment. Princess Anne told him flatly that the numbers did not lie, the monarchy was bleeding relevance in the Commonwealth, and the time for traditional leadership had expired. She told her brother that the legacy protocol was now active. Prince William's reaction was even more explosive. He reportedly stood up so abruptly his chair nearly toppled, demanding to know how a private memorandum could override centuries of established law. He questioned if his father was being forced into a shadow abdication. Anne's response was cold and calculated. She told William that the crown does not belong to a person, but to the institution, and the institution had chosen a new path for survival. This is the moment where the timeline shifts. The document, authenticated by the former private secretary to the Queen, does not focus on Charles's tenure or William's preparation. Instead, it points to a third path, a path that bypasses the traditional male hierarchy. As the clock struck 2 in the morning, the tension reached a breaking point. Charles stared at the specific clause at the bottom of the second page. William leaned over his father's shoulder, his face turning a pale shade of grey. The name written there, designated as the sole guardian of the monarchy's future, was not a Windsor by birth. It was Catherine, the Princess of Wales. But it wasn't just a title. The memorandum assigns her powers that would effectively make her the first constitutional manager in British history, placing her above the king in matters of public strategy and institutional reform. The question now is not if the world is ready, but if the palace can survive the next 72 hours. Charles looked at the letter. William stood frozen. The Queen had spoken from beyond the grave, and she had chosen Catherine as the only one capable of saving the crown from itself. Stay tuned, because what happens next at the stroke of dawn will redefine the British Empire forever. Don't go anywhere. To understand the gravity of what happened at Sandringham last night, we have to stop looking at the present and start looking at the trail of breadcrumbs left behind over the last 2 decades. This was never a sudden change of heart by a dying queen. It was a calculated, multi-generational strategic play. We are looking at a blueprint for a shadow monarchy, and the timeline of its activation is chillingly precise. The first major pivot occurred in September 2022 at Balmoral Castle. In the final 48 hours of her life, Queen Elizabeth II did not just focus on her farewells. Documents from the Royal Archives suggest she signed a series of letters patent under total secrecy. This was the moment Princess Anne was officially designated as the last guardian. The consequence was immediate. Anne became the only person with the legal authority to bypass the king's internal circle. She held the key to a contingency plan that Charles and William didn't even know existed. Move forward to April 2023. Inside the hushed corridors of the Privy Council office, an administrative update was logged under a deep blue security clearance. Catherine's personal dossier was modified. The legal language was subtle but devastating. Her privileges were quietly adjusted to mirror those of a Prince Regent. On paper, she was still the Princess of Wales. In the underlying legal architecture of the state, she was already being granted the power to act as the ultimate arbiter of the Crown's interests. Then came the event that sparked 1,000 conspiracy theories. January 2024. The world was told Catherine was recovering from a private medical procedure. She disappeared from the public eye for months. But our internal sources within the intelligence community suggest a different narrative. This wasn't just physical recovery, it was the great preparation. Catherine was reportedly undergoing an intensive, high-level briefing on statecraft, constitutional law, and global crisis management training usually reserved for a reigning monarch. She was being forged in silence. By November 2025, the stability trigger was finally tripped. Polls across the Commonwealth showed public support for the monarchy had plummeted to an all-time low of 38%. King Charles's reign was being characterized by nostalgic stagnation. The institution was at a breaking point. Under the terms of the late Queen's memorandum, the 36-month failure clause was now active. This brings us to the Shadow Queen mechanism, a three-step process designed to save the throne from its own bloodline. Step 1. The documented weakening of the traditional monarch's image. Step 2. The activation of the supplemental support clause, which Anne triggered last night. Step 3. The total reallocation of power. How does it work? It's a surgical strike against tradition. Once activated, Catherine is granted direct control over the duchy assets and the monarchy's global PR machine. Completely bypassing the king's private office, she becomes the face, the voice, and the checkbook of the Windsors, while Charles remains the ceremonial figurehead. But why Catherine? Why would the longest reigning monarch in history bet everything on a woman born outside the palace walls? To find the answer, we have to look into the Middleton dossier, a secret file that reveals Kate was being tested long before she ever wore a tiara. There is a reason she never broke under pressure, and the details of her early assignments will change everything you thought you knew about the Princess of Wales. The contents of that dossier are what we are uncovering next. The question echoing through the halls of Sandringham last night wasn't just about the what, but the why. Why, Catherine? Why would a monarch who spent 70 years guarding the purity of the royal bloodline suddenly entrust the institution's survival to a woman born outside of it? The answer is hidden within what palace insiders call the Middleton dossier, a decades-long assessment that proves Catherine was not just married into the family, she was recruited. Queen Elizabeth II was a master of long-term observation. She saw the flaws in her own lineage with brutal clarity. She perceived King Charles as brilliant but emotionally sensitive, prone to the whims of his own passions. She saw Prince William as a man of duty, yet burdened by a volatile temperament and the scars of his childhood. The Queen knew that the crown could not survive another era of emotional instability. It needed an anchor. It needed steel blood. Look closely at the physical evidence. Underneath Catherine's hair, on the left side of her head, is a 3-inch scar from an emergency operation in 1995. While most teenagers would have sought attention or sympathy, Catherine returned to her studies at Marlborough College with a silence that bordered on the supernatural. That was the first red flag for the Queen's talent scouts. Then, look at her gap year in Southampton. She didn't spend it on a Mediterranean yacht. She worked as a deckhand, performing unglamorous, back-breaking labor in the cold winds of the English coast. She was being tested for resilience long before she ever met William at St. Andrews. But the most compelling evidence lies in the internal security records. For 10 years, the British tabloids mocked her with the nickname Waity Katie. They thought she was a social climber waiting for a ring. However, leaked intelligence summaries from the mid-2000s suggest that internal monitors, the silent eyes of the state, were actually tracking her psychological endurance. They were watching to see if the relentless pressure of the paparazzi would cause her to crack, to lash out, or to leak secrets. She did none of those things. She remained a fortress of silence. The Queen realized that while Charles and William were products of a fragile system, Catherine was a product of the earth. Her maternal ancestors were coal miners from the north of England. This wasn't a PR talking point. It was a strategic asset. Elizabeth II believed that the monarchy had become too removed from the grit of the people it ruled. By activating Catherine, the Queen wasn't just modernizing the throne, she was injecting it with the steel blood of the working class, the only thing strong enough to hold a crumbling house together. This was the Middleton dossier that Princess Anne laid out on the table at Sandringham. It was a record of 20 years of perfect composure under fire. Anne reportedly told her brother and nephew that while they were busy managing their images, Catherine was busy managing her character. But the dossier contained one final, chilling insight. The Queen didn't just choose Catherine to support the king, she chose her to protect the crown from the king if necessary. And as the argument inside room 1844 escalated into the early hours of the morning, that realization finally hit Charles. He wasn't just looking at a daughter-in-law, he was looking at his mother's hand-picked successor. The confrontation that followed was not just a family spat, it was a full-scale constitutional collision, and the way Charles reacted would determine whether the House of Windsor survived until dawn. The clock in room 1844 struck 0 at exactly 02:15 this morning. The carefully curated mask of royal decorum didn't just slip, it shattered. According to witnesses within the inner security perimeter, the sound of King Charles's hand slamming onto the mahogany table echoed through the heavy oak doors. A delicate porcelain cup of Earl Grey tea tipped over, the dark liquid seeping into the Queen's cream-colored memorandum like an encroaching shadow. "This is an insult to the very concept of the crown," the king reportedly shouted, his voice strained with a mixture of exhaustion and betrayal. For Charles, this wasn't just about a letter, it was about the validity of his entire life's weight. To have his mother, the woman who defined the institution, question his stability from beyond the grave was a wound that no coronation could heal. Prince William was no less agitated. The transcripts of the encounter, as recounted by those close to the council, describe a future king who felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. He reportedly stood over the table, his gaze fixed on Princess Anne, questioning the primogeniture protocols. He demanded to know how his birthright, and that of his father, could be diluted by a secret addendum. "We were raised for this," William reportedly argued. "The line of succession is not a suggestion." Princess Anne's response was a masterclass in cold institutional pragmatism. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't offer a hug. She simply waited for the silence to return before delivering the hammer blow. "Mother didn't believe in the blind right of inheritance," Anne reportedly said, her voice sharp as a razor. "She believed in survival, and she saw that the current trajectory of this family ends in a republic." This is where the legal trap was revealed. Anne invoked the Regency Act of 1937, but with a terrifying modern twist. She informed Charles that if he refused to accept the supplemental memorandum, the council would have no choice but to trigger a formal review of the king's administrative capacity. This wouldn't be a private family discussion. Under the 1937 Act, it would involve the Prime Minister, the Lord Chancellor, and the Speaker of the House of Commons. The mechanism is simple but lethal. Step 1, Declaration of Institutional Instability. Step 2, Parliamentary Inquiry into the monarch's ability to ensure the continuity of the state. Step 3, the forced implementation of a regency. Anne made it clear. Charles could either share power with Catherine voluntarily, or he could face a public investigation that would likely end his reign before it truly began. But the most haunting detail of the Sandringham confrontation is the absence of the person at the center of the storm. While the three senior royals were debating her future and the fate of the British Empire, Catherine was 30 miles away at Adelaide Cottage. She wasn't wearing a tiara. She wasn't reviewing constitutional law. According to household staff, she had spent the evening exactly like any other mother, quietly tucking George, Charlotte, and Louis into bed. She was reportedly sitting in her small study, looking out at the dark trees of Windsor Great Park, completely unaware that her name had just been used as a weapon in a palace coup. She had never asked for the power Anne was now forcing upon her. She had never campaigned for the role of guardian of the crown, but the Queen's final wish had made her the most powerful woman in the world, without her even knowing it. As the dawn approached Sandringham, the question shifted from whether Charles would accept the plan to what would happen when Catherine finally found out she had been drafted into a war she never wanted to fight. The fallout of that revelation is what the palace is currently scrambling to contain. As the first light of dawn begins to touch the grey stone of Sandringham House on this morning, April 29th, 2026, the most powerful family in Britain finds itself at a historical crossroads. The legacy protocol left by Elizabeth II is no longer a theoretical exercise, it is a live grenade. Our analysis of the current power dynamics within the palace suggests three distinct paths forward. This is the scenario tree, and the choice made in the next few hours will determine if the monarchy survives to see the next decade. The first path, Scenario Alpha, is the implosion scenario. This happens if King Charles chooses to fight. If the king decides to challenge the legal validity of his mother's secret memorandum, he risks a total fracture with Princess Anne. In this version of events, Anne acting as the ultimate loyalist to the institution. Not the man would likely leak the document's existence to the Privy Council or the Prime Minister. The result? A scorched earth constitutional crisis. Public faith would vanish instantly as the internal civil war became front-page news. Our models suggest that under this level of instability, the British monarchy would likely face a forced referendum on its existence within 12 months. It is the end of 1,000 years of history. The second path, Scenario Beta, is the shadow ambiguity. In this scenario, the family agrees to follow the Queen's wishes, but refuses to formalize them. Catherine would act as a princess regent in practice, taking on the heavy strategic lifting and diplomatic negotiations, but without an official title or public announcement. While this saves face for Charles, it is structurally unstable. The palace would become a sieve of rumors. Every time Catherine overrides a royal decree or shifts a budget, the friction between her office and the King's office would create headlines. This path doesn't solve the crisis, it merely delays it, leading to a slow, painful erosion of authority. Then, there is the most realistic path, the one currently being debated behind the closed doors of Room 1844. We call it the Catherine Protocol. Under this arrangement, the traditional hierarchy remains intact for the cameras. Charles keeps the crown. William keeps his position as the immediate heir. But behind the scenes, the steel blood takes command. This protocol creates a new, unwritten constitutional rule. Every major strategic decision, every high-level diplomatic appointment, and every pound of the sovereign grant's discretionary spending must be co-signed by Catherine. Why is this the most likely outcome? Because it is the only way to satisfy a public that is increasingly skeptical of the old guard. The British people aren't necessarily looking to abolish the monarchy, they are looking for a reason to keep it. Catherine provides that reason. She is the bridge between the 1900s and the 21st century. By giving her the veto stamp, the palace can offer the world a monarch who looks like tradition but thinks like a modern executive. But as the meeting at Sandringham nears its conclusion, there is a chilling realization settling over the room. The Catherine Protocol only works if Catherine herself agrees to it. She has spent years being the perfect supportive wife and the quiet duchess. To accept this new role is to sacrifice her private life, her family's normalcy, and her own peace for the sake of an institution that is currently in a state of panic. And there is one more thing. Rumors are circulating among the high-level couriers at Sandringham that the cream-colored envelope contained more than just the memorandum. There was a second page, a personal, handwritten note from Elizabeth II, addressed only to Catherine. A note that contains a revelation so explosive, it might make Catherine reconsider everything. The sun is rising, but the real storm is just beginning. The silence that settled over Room 1844 as the sun began to rise over the Norfolk coast was heavier than the darkness that preceded it. The confrontation was over, but the war for the future of the British monarchy had just entered its most volatile phase. Princess Anne, the only figure in the room who seemed untouched by the night's exhaustion, stood up slowly. In a gesture of cold, calculated poise, she reached up and adjusted the diamond brooch pinned to her lapel, a piece that had belonged to Elizabeth II. It was a silent signal. The authority of the mother now resided in the daughter. "The clock is no longer a luxury we possess," Anne reportedly told Charles and William, her eyes sweeping over the spilled tea and the sewn-edged memorandum. "We have exactly 72 hours before the international press corps smells the fog at Sandringham. By then, we must have a unified front, or we must have a resignation. This brings us to the ultimate deadline, 0800 hours on May 1st, 2026. To the public, this date marks the 15th wedding anniversary of the Prince and Princess of Wales, a day of celebration and romantic retrospection. But according to our high-level sources within the Lord Chamberlain's office, May 1st has been repurposed. It is now the designated launch window for a structural realignment announcement. The palace intends to use the optics of a stable, 15-year marriage to mask the most radical shift in royal power since the abdication of 1936. How this will be framed remains the palace's most guarded secret. Will Charles announce a strategic partnership, or will we see the birth of a new title for Catherine? The tension is not just about the change itself, but about the precedent it sets. However, there is a detail in this investigation that has been overlooked by almost every analyst until now. In the chaos of the late-night meeting, as Charles and William focused on the constitutional legality of the first page of the Queen's memorandum, they failed to notice that the cream-coloured envelope contained a second, smaller slip of paper, a document shielded by a secondary seal, intended for one person only. Our investigators have spent the last 6 hours cross-referencing movement logs and photographic evidence from the past 48 hours. There is a private request from Elizabeth II to Catherine, a request so profound that if it were to be made public, it would not just change the hierarchy, it would dismantle the very culture of the House of Windsor. Do you want to know what was written on that second page? The answer might already be staring us in the face. Look closely at the latest high-resolution photographs of the Princess of Wales taken during her brief appearance at the Windsor estate yesterday. For the first time since her engagement in 2010, the iconic 12-carat Ceylon sapphire, the ring that once belonged to Diana, is missing from her left hand. In the world of royal semiotics, nothing is an accident. The absence of that ring is not a fashion choice, it is a signal. Is Catherine rejecting the legacy of the women who came before her to forge a path that is entirely her own? Or has the second page instructed her to step into a role that the sapphire can no longer represent? The 72-hour countdown has begun. Before the May 1st announcement shatters the status quo, we will be releasing the full contents of the second-page dossier. This is history in the making, and the truth is far more complex than a simple inheritance. If you want to stay ahead of the palace's PR machine, you need to be part of this investigation. Hit the subscribe button and turn on all notifications. Like this video to tell the algorithm that royal transparency matters. And most importantly, comment the second page below if you want us to drop the next update immediately. The fog is lifting, and what it reveals will change everything. Don't go anywhere, the real story is just beginning. 7:28 a.m., Thursday, April 23rd, 2026. While the rest of the world is waking up to headlines about the upcoming royal state visit to Washington, a ghost has just materialized on platform 13 of the Kyiv Central Railway Station. Prince Harry has just stepped off an overnight train from Poland. He is alone. He is unannounced, and he is clutching his worn Invictus jacket like a suit of armor against the freezing Ukrainian morning. There is no Meghan Markle. There are no cameras from Netflix. There is only a man whose reputation is currently cratering on 3 continents, attempting the most desperate pivot in the history of modern public relations. Just 48 hours ago, the Sussex's private jet touched down in California following their disastrous so-called faux royal tour of Australia. In Sydney, they were branded as royals for sale. In Melbourne, Meghan was reportedly ignored by the public, and high-level sponsorship deals were whispered to have frozen solid. The Sussex brand didn't just fail in Australia, it shattered. So, how does a man who claims he cannot visit London without elite SAS-level protection suddenly find himself comfortable on a platform in a city under active drone bombardment? This is the investigative file you weren't supposed to see. Before we dive into the financial black hole behind this trip, hit the like button and subscribe. If you think Harry's solo mission is a genuine act of service, or a calculated stunt to save his bank account, Tell me in the comments right now. We are monitoring the data in real time. The official narrative from the Duke's camp, exclusively fed to ITV News, is that this is a self-financed humanitarian mission. But let's look at the ledger. We are talking about a couple currently facing mounting legal bills and a lifestyle in Montecito that costs tens of thousands of dollars a day to maintain. If the bank accounts are as dry as the Australian desert they just left, who is actually cutting the check for a private high-security transit into a war zone? ITV's royal editor, Chris Shipp, who was the only correspondent allowed to shadow this top-secret arrival, reported the atmosphere was, quote, remarkably low-key. Shipp narrated the scene, describing how Harry slipped past a handful of commuters, looking less like a prince and more like a man on a deadline. When questioned about his presence, Harry reportedly told associates, "The world must not grow numb to this. I am here as a friend who understands the cost of conflict, but the timing tells a different story." The investigative timeline is damning. April 18th. The Australian tour ends in a PR bloodbath. April 21st. The Sussexes land in California. April 22nd. Harry is spotted at the Polish border. April 23rd. He is in Kiev. Why the rush? Why leave Meghan behind? The answer lies in the shadow diplomacy mechanism. In Australia, Meghan was the catalyst for the royals for sale narrative. She is currently viewed by global investors as high risk, high drama. Harry knows that to win back the American elite, he needs to reclaim the one thing he has left, his status as the soldier prince. He is using the Halo Trust and the Invictus Games as a human shield. He is standing in the shadow of Princess Diana's legacy to mask the stench of a failed commercial tour. When Harry stands in a minefield today, he isn't just looking for explosives, he is looking for a way to blow up the negative headlines from Sydney. We've uncovered a document regarding the United Kingdom's Soft Power Council, a body established in early 2025 to leverage royal assets for diplomatic influence. The coincidence is staggering. Just as the UK government announces a £4.5 billion support package for Ukraine, the renegade prince appears on the front lines. Is he a rogue agent? Or is he a shadow envoy for the very family he spent 6 years trashing? One senior palace source reportedly reacted to the news with cold indifference, stating, quote, "The Duke of Sussex does not represent His Majesty. His actions are his own, as are his consequences." But as Harry prepares to deliver a keynote speech at the Kyiv Security Forum, the stakes have shifted from family drama to global instability. He is about to demand that the United States honor its treaty obligations. He is about to lecture a sitting administration from a war zone. The question isn't just, what is Harry doing in Ukraine? The question is, who is really paying for the microphone? Stay with us. In the next few minutes, we are going to expose the secret financial link between the Sussex's Delaware-based holding companies and the non-governmental organizations currently hosting Harry in Kyiv. The paper trail is about to get very, very hot. Don't go anywhere. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The breakdown of Harry's 3-word warning to the Kremlin is coming up next. To understand the sheer magnitude of the earthquake David Beckham triggered last night, we have to look past the glitz of the palace dinner and into a timeline of calculated deception that spans 7 years. This is not a series of unfortunate accidents. It is a meticulously documented trail of broken promises. The forensic report, scheduled for full public release by the palace on April 28, 2026, maps out a strategy that courtiers are now calling the ultimate extraction. The first entry in this dossier takes us back to November 2019. While the world believed the Duke and Duchess were simply taking a much-needed break from the spotlight, an encrypted account, identified in the files as 0042, was quietly opened in the Cayman Islands. This wasn't a small rainy day fund. Within weeks, £11 million began flowing through a network of shell companies in Dubai and Singapore. The timing is damning. This financial infrastructure was being built at the exact moment Meghan was still representing the Queen, effectively creating a secret escape hatch before she even mentioned the word step back. Fast forward to the Sandringham Summit in January 2020. We all remember the image of a somber Prince Harry leaving the estate after a grueling meeting with his grandmother. The agreement was crystal clear. You may leave the institution, but you cannot use your royal titles of prince and princess for commercial profit. It was a deal based on honor, but the Cayman records show that even as the ink was drying on that agreement, the £11 million were already being leveraged to secure high-stakes media contracts. The Queen was promised service, the offshore accounts were promised an empire. The consequences of this duality came to a crashing halt in March 2026. During the Sussex's controversial return to Sydney, Australia. The palace has been closely monitoring the public's reaction, and the data is brutal. Where Princess Diana drew hundreds of thousands of weeping fans in 1983, Harry and Meghan faced a landscape of indifference. Drone footage from the Sydney Opera House shows a dismal scattering of curious tourists, rather than a royal crowd. The most viral image of the trip wasn't of the couple, but of sunbathers at Bondi Beach, who didn't even bother to lift their sunglasses as the media pack swarmed past them. But it was April 15, 2026, that marked the moral breaking point for King Charles. At a somber memorial for the victims of a tragic massacre at Bondi Beach, Meghan appeared in what looked like a moment of shared grief. However, behind the scenes, a digital mechanism was working in overdrive. Within minutes of her arrival, the Shop the Look app was updated with every item she was wearing. It wasn't just a fashion statement, it was a real-time marketing campaign at a crime scene. A senior royal source reportedly told investigators, "To monetize a massacre memorial is a level of depravity the institution simply cannot survive." The greed escalated just 5 days later, on April 20th. A luxury wellness retreat advertised tickets for $2,000 to sit in the presence of the Duchess. Hundreds paid, expecting an afternoon of mentorship. Instead, Meghan stayed for exactly 30 minutes before leaving to attend a rugby game. The resulting chaos, fans screaming for refunds and accusing the Sussex brand of a scam, forced the palace's hand. Today, April 24th, we stand at the edge of the cliff. The dossier is no longer a secret. The investigation has moved from the shadows to the public square. Why did a celebrity fixer in Los Angeles receive £3 million from the Cayman account just last week? And what was the true purpose of the secret meeting Harry held with a high-level Australian official 3 hours after Meghan left that retreat? The timeline is complete, and the final entry, set for 4 days from now, promises to be the end of the Sussex era as we know it. The only question remains: who else is hiding in the shadows of account 0042? While the world focused on the solemn images of the recent visit to Bondi Beach, a darker, more sophisticated operation was running in the background, one that has finally pushed the British monarchy to its breaking point. This is the profit mechanism, a digital extraction system so clinical that it has triggered an international investigation by the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF. To understand why the King's patience has finally evaporated, we have to look at how a tragedy was turned into a global retail event. The mechanism is divided into 4 ruthless steps. It begins with the sensitive activation. On April 15, 2026, Meghan appeared at the memorial site for the victims of the Bondi massacre. To the public, it looked like a moment of royal mourning. But according to digital forensic logs, the moment her foot touched the sand, a specialized PR team was already executing a real-time data push. High-resolution images of her $500 designer dress were not just sent to news outlets, they were instantly uploaded to a Shop the Look affiliate application. The second step is the institutional tether. This is where the legal line was crossed. Each product listing didn't just describe the fabric, it explicitly used the title Duchess of Sussex to validate the luxury status of the item. By linking a sovereign title directly to a commercial shopping link during a memorial service for victims of a terrorist act, the Sussex brand committed what courtiers are calling a sacrilegious breach of protocol. The third step is the ghost payout. Every time a user clicked to shop the look of the Morning Duchess, a commission was generated. However, these funds didn't go to a standard business account. They were routed through a secondary affiliate network, eventually landing in the HM 2019 account in Georgetown. This wasn't just celebrity branding, it was the unauthorized monetization of a royal status that the couple had promised to keep non-commercial during the Sandringham summit. The final step, and the reason for the current state of emergency, is the ethical fracture. The palace's institutional ethics clause strictly prohibits any member of the royal family, working or otherwise, from profiting from sites of national or international tragedy. When the king's advisors saw the data showing that Meghan had allegedly earned over £200,000 in commissions from the Bondi Memorial appearance alone, the decision was no longer about family, it was about criminal liability. This discovery has now escalated far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. The FATF, the global watchdog for money laundering and terrorist financing, has officially opened a file on these Shop the Look affiliate streams. They are investigating whether these shadow commissions were used to bypass international banking transparency laws. The authority of the FATF is absolute, and their involvement brings a terrifying new reality for the Sussexes. A 30-day global asset freeze. In 30 days, every account linked to the Sussex brand, from their Montecito estate funds to the secret Cayman accounts, could be locked by international mandate. This explains the urgency of David Beckham's proud moment signal. The palace had to distance itself immediately. By ensuring Meghan is listed as non-titled in official logs today, the Crown is legally insulating itself from the FATF investigation. But as the financial walls close in, a new detail has emerged from the Bondi footage. While Meghan was being photographed with first responders, a private security detail was seen carrying an encrypted satellite device, one usually reserved for high-level government communication. Why would a private citizen need military-grade encryption at a public memorial? The deeper the investigators dig into the Shop the Look operation, the more they realize that the clothes were just the surface. What was really being sold in Bondi wasn't a dress, it was something far more dangerous. Yesterday morning, at precisely 10:30 a.m., the heavy oak doors of Room 4B within the Privy Council office were locked from the inside. This room, tucked away from the public tours and the prying eyes of the media, became the site of a constitutional execution. On the mahogany table sat a single file, bound in black leather, the Cayman dossier. It is a document so sensitive that only 4 people in the United Kingdom have read it in its entirety. The authority behind this dossier is absolute, constructed through what experts call a triple-layer verification. The first layer consists of 40 shadow transaction statements. These records track exactly £11 million as they moved through a sophisticated global laundry. The money did not travel in a straight line. It pulsed through shell companies in Dubai and Singapore jurisdictions chosen specifically for their lack of transparency before settling in the Georgetown account in the Cayman Islands. Each of these 40 transactions was flagged not by a tabloid journalist, but by the Financial Intelligence Unit, or FIU, working in a rare high-level partnership with the Palace forensic team. When the FIU brings evidence to the sovereign, it is no longer a family matter, it is a state matter. The investigators were able to deconstruct the encryption surrounding account 0042, revealing that the funds were being used to finance a private intelligence network, a shadow court designed to operate in direct opposition to Buckingham Palace. This brings us to the second layer of authority, the legal nuclear option. In Room 4B, the King was presented with a draft that has not been seriously considered for over a century. It is the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. Originally designed to strip British titles from German royals who had taken up arms against the king during World War I, it is the most severe legal instrument in the monarchy's arsenal. To invoke this act is to declare someone an enemy of the crown. A senior official present in the room described the atmosphere as clinical and ice cold. King Charles reportedly sat in silence for 15 minutes, staring at the evidence of the Singapore transfers. When he finally spoke, his voice was devoid of the paternal warmth he once held for his daughter-in-law. He was overheard saying to the Lord President of the Council, "We are no longer protecting a family member. We are protecting the integrity of the British state." Proceed with the draft. The draft approved in Room 4B yesterday morning is not just a suggestion, it is an irrevocable mandate. By invoking the 1917 Act, the King has bypassed the usual lengthy parliamentary debates, utilising a sovereign emergency clause that triggers an immediate removal of all styles, honours, and peerages. The document specifically notes that the Duchess of Sussex is a title that has been used to facilitate financial activities incompatible with the dignity of the peerage. But the most haunting detail within the Cayman dossier isn't the money from Dubai or Singapore. It is a final separate tab labelled Domestic Interference. Within that section lies the evidence of 3 specific transactions that did not come from overseas. These 3 transfers, totalling nearly £2 million, originated from a high street bank in London. Someone inside the United Kingdom, someone with direct access to the inner workings of the royal household, has been funding Meghan's shadow operation from within. As the sun set over London yesterday, the order was signed. The legal nuke has been launched. But as the palace prepares to announce the total stripping of the Sussex titles, the question shifting through the corridors of power is no longer about Meghan's survival. It is about the identity of the London benefactor. Who is the mole inside the palace walls who made the Cayman dossier possible? The answer is hidden in the final pages of the report, and the countdown to its exposure has already begun. The most devastating critique of the Sussex brand didn't come from a constitutional lawyer or a palace official. It came in the form of a $64 tub of wax. Recently, a prominent entertainment reporter ordered a signature candle from Meghan's new lifestyle range, a product marketed as the height of royal-adjacent luxury. When the package arrived, he discovered a shocking manufacturing defect. The candle had no wick. It was a useless, expensive block of wax that could never be lit. In the world of high-level PR, there is no such thing as a coincidence, only metaphors. This wickless candle has become the internal code name within the palace for the entire Sussex operation. It represents a brand that is flashy, overpriced, and meticulously packaged, but utterly hollow at its core. It is an empire that promises light, but lacks the internal mechanism to provide it. This $64 failure is a physical manifestation of a brand that has traded its soul for a retail price tag. But the hollow nature of the brand has moved from a manufacturing joke to an institutional outrage. As Mother's Day approaches, the marketing machine in Montecito has shifted into a gear that many find reprehensible. Reports have surfaced that the new range of products is being sold using the royal titles of Archie and Lilibet. This is a direct, documented violation of the Megxit agreement struck with the late Queen Elizabeth II. That deal was built on a single, sacred pillar. Royal titles must never be leveraged for personal profit. To use the styles of prince and princess to sell candles and home goods is more than just a business move. It is a breach of a deathbed promise made to a reigning monarch. Sources close to the king suggest that this specific exploitation of the children's status was the final straw for the sovereign. "It is one thing to sell your own story," a senior aide remarked, "but it is quite another to use the next generation as a marketing tool for a luxury startup." The reality of this declining influence was put on painful display during the recent trip to Australia. To understand the collapse of the Sussex magic, one only needs to look at the side-by-side footage of Bondi Beach. In 1983, when Princess Diana visited, the sand was invisible, covered by a sea of people who had waited for hours just to catch a glimpse of her. In April 2026, as Harry and Meghan walked across that same beach, the footage tells a hauntingly different story. Video captured by local news outlets shows sunbathers in Bondi refusing to even sit up as the couple passed by. While the media pack swarmed around them, trying to manufacture a sense of chaos, the local public remained chillingly indifferent. People continued their sunbathing and their conversations as if two private citizens were simply walking to a beach cafe. They were no longer viewed as icons. They were viewed as a minor inconvenience, a barrier on the beach to be ignored. The Diana effect has been replaced by a sun-drenched indifference. This disconnect between the perceived royal status and the public reality is where the Sussex brand is disintegrating. Meghan was reportedly seen speaking to victims and first responders at the Bondi Memorial, but even in that moment of high emotion, the Shop the Look app was reportedly updated. It was the ultimate juxtaposition of the wickless brand, performing the duties of a duchess while running the ledger of a CEO. As the palace prepares to finalize the financial investigation, the question is no longer whether the titles will be stripped, but what will happen when the wax finally melts away. The public is starting to see the $64 tub for what it is. And as the global markets react to the indifference seen in Bondi, a new, even more disturbing report is emerging from the palace's digital forensic team. It involves a series of bot accounts used to inflate the success of these very products accounts that lead straight back to the Cayman account. The wickless empire is starting to crumble, and the next revelation may be the one that turns the indifference of the public into something far more permanent. As of today, April 28, 2026, the heavy oak doors of Room 4B have opened, and the signed mandate of the Privy Council is moving through the veins of the British government. The transition from royalty to publicity risk is no longer a theory, it is an active legal process. But as the Duchess title is systematically erased from international registries, we are left with a critical question. What does the wreckage of the Sussex brand look like tomorrow? Based on the intelligence within the Cayman dossier, we have mapped out 3 distinct scenarios for the future of Harry and Meghan. The first scenario is total exile. In this outcome, the 1917 Titles Deprivation Act is used to its full, scorched earth capacity. They are stripped of every honor, every style, and every military link, relegated to the names Mr. and Mrs. Mountbatten Windsor. This is more than a social demotion, it is a commercial bankruptcy. Global luxury partners do not sign multi-million-dollar contracts with a Mr. in California. They sign them for the prestige of a highness. In this scenario, the brand becomes toxic. The Netflix renewals vanish, and the wickless empire finally burns out in the cold reality of a crowded celebrity market. The second scenario is the 5-year legal war. Insiders at a high-powered Los Angeles law firm suggest that Meghan has already prepared a massive counteroffensive. This path involves a grueling, international legal battle where she sues the palace for institutional victimization and contractual interference. By leveraging accusations of systemic bias, she could drag the monarchy through the mud for another half-decade. It would be a war of attrition, designed to keep her name in the headlines and force a massive financial settlement from the king just to buy her silence. However, the third scenario is the most realistic, and by far the most chilling. The internal collapse. This is the exit strategy currently being whispered about in the corridors of Kensington Palace. According to sources within the Financial Intelligence Unit, Prince Harry has reportedly sought independent legal counsel. There are rumors of a statement given under oath where Harry claims he was entirely unaware of the £11 million in the Cayman account. If Harry can prove he was a victim of a shadow operation run by his own wife, he creates a path for his own return to the United Kingdom as the prodigal son. This scenario ends in a multi-million-dollar divorce that would shatter the US against the world narrative forever. It allows the Crown to protect Harry while casting Meghan as the sole architect of the deception. It is the only way for the monarchy to heal, but it comes at the price of a total family fracture. As we stand here on the morning of April 28th, the Beckham signal has made one thing clear. The line in the sand is now a wall of stone. If you want to stay ahead of the official announcements and see the actual bank records we are uncovering, you must hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on your notifications, because the next 24 hours will determine the fate of a dynasty. What do you think Harry's next move will be? Let us know in the comments below. We are reading every single one. But before we close this file, there is one final terrifying detail that the public hasn't seen. While the FIU was tracking the 40 transactions into account 0042, they found something they didn't expect. 37 of those transfers came from overseas, but 3 specific payments totaling nearly £2 million originated from a private investment fund located right here in the heart of London. This means Meghan wasn't acting alone from California. She has a benefactor inside the United Kingdom, a high-level mole with deep pockets and even deeper access to the royal household. We have the names of the fund managers. We have the dates of the transfers. And in our next investigation, we are going to name the person who has been funding the destruction of the monarchy from within the palace walls. The final betrayal is closer than you think. Stay tuned. 1945 hours. Sunday, April 26, 2026. Inside the state dining room of Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere is thick with more than just the scent of expensive lilies. The massive chandeliers, usually blazing with the light of 1,000 crystals, have been dimmed to a flickering, somber amber. This was not an administrative error. It was a direct, high-level directive issued by the Office of the Prince of Wales, citing new energy conservation protocols for the spring quarter. But everyone in that gilded room understood the subtext. It was a cold, calculated move to strip the room of its grandeur at the exact moment Queen Camilla made her entrance. She stood there, illuminated by the dying light, wearing a piece of jewelry that has sent shockwaves through the diplomatic corps as of 7 a.m. this morning, April 27th. The Tudor crown brooch, a masterpiece of silver, encrusted with rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. It is the central element of King Charles III's official cipher, the literal symbol of his sovereignty. By pinning it to her chest while the king remains secluded in his private quarters under a veil of medical secrecy, Camilla was not just wearing an heirloom, she was declaring herself the acting sovereign. One high-ranking courtier was overheard, whispering to a colleague near the mahogany sideboard. She is no longer waiting for the transition, she is executing it herself. But the real story isn't just what Camilla was wearing, it's what Prince Edward was not. Across the room, the Duke of Edinburgh stood in stark, chilling defiance. In a world where royal men display their history through a chest full of medals and honours, Edward appeared in a plain, sharp black suit. No medals, no stars, no ribbons, a calculated void. It was a silent, visual protest that hit the palace inner circle like a physical blow. When a senior equerry reportedly leaned in to ask if the Duke had forgotten his decorations for such a formal occasion, Edward's response was recorded by witnesses as being as sharp as a razor. He reportedly said, "One only displays honours for a leadership they still recognise." This is the breaking news that the mainstream media is too terrified to broadcast. Welcome to the invisible war for the British throne. If you can feel the tectonic plates of the Windsor dynasty shifting as we speak, you need to hit the like button right now and subscribe. We are tracking the moves the palace PR machine is trying to bury in real time. Tell me in the comments, is Edward the hero William needs, or is he playing a dangerous game of his own? Let us look at the authority tier of this scandal. The Lord Chamberlain's office maintains a rigid mechanism for the distribution of the crown jewels. According to confidential internal logs from Garrett, the official jeweler to the crown, the Tudor crown brooch was moved from its high-security vault at 1500 hours on Friday afternoon. It was signed out under a temporary emergency authorization, a specific legal loophole usually reserved for state funerals or sudden coronations. Our sources indicate that Camilla triggered this mechanism while the king was reportedly resting, effectively bypassing the sovereign's personal sign-off. This was a breach of protocol so severe that the jewelry experts at Berganza are reportedly calling it a jewelry coup. The immediate consequence of this move became visible just 3 hours ago. At 8 a.m. this morning, April 27th, the Office of the Prince of Wales issued a staggering update to the royal calendar. They have officially refused to confirm a single joint engagement between Prince William and Queen Camilla for the entire month of May. When pressed by the press corps for an explanation, the response from Kensington Palace was a masterclass in royal aggression. The statement read, "The Prince's schedule is focused exclusively on the institutional stability of the future." The word Queen was conspicuously absent. This is how the mechanism of a royal collapse works. Step 1. A power vacuum is created by the King's declining health. Step 2. An outsider, in this case Camilla, attempts to fill that vacuum with symbolic displays of authority like the Tudor brooch. Step 3. The bloodline loyalists, led by Edward and William, trigger a total blackout of support. We are now seeing the seating chart insult play out in real time. By refusing to coordinate with the Queen, William is effectively erasing her from the visual narrative of the monarchy. Edward, acting as the bridge between the old guard and the new, is the one providing the tactical cover. As we move deeper into this Monday morning, the question isn't just about jewelry. It is about who actually controls the signature of the king. The gates of Buckingham Palace remain closed, but the documents we are uncovering tell a story of a dynasty at its ultimate breaking point. Stay tuned, because the next hour of this investigation will reveal exactly what Edward found in the king's private study that changed everything. Don't go anywhere. To truly understand why the tension inside Buckingham Palace has reached a terminal velocity today. On April 27th, 2026, we have to look past the current headlines and decrypt a 5-year sequence of tactical maneuvers. This was never a sudden outburst of emotion. It is a cold-blooded restructuring of the British monarchy that began in the quiet, salt-misted corridors of Sandringham. The first domino fell on April 9th, 2021. When Prince Philip, the late Duke of Edinburgh, passed away, the media focused on the Queen's grief. But behind the scenes, Prince Edward lost his ultimate protector. For decades, Philip had groomed his youngest son for a very specific, quiet brand of power. In the wake of that loss, Edward didn't retreat. He began what insiders called the strategy of absolute reliability. He became the one who never complained, never leaked, and never failed to show up. By March 10th, 2023, that strategy paid off. King Charles officially conferred the title of Duke of Edinburgh upon Edward. This was not just a sentimental birthday gift. In the legal architecture of the palace, that title granted Edward a permanent seat at the highest deliberative tables. He was no longer just the younger brother. He was now a peer to the King and the Prince of Wales. Then came the catalyst. February 5th, 2024. The announcement of King Charles's cancer diagnosis changed the physics of the family. As the King retreated for treatment at Clarence House, a power vacuum opened. Camilla stepped into the light, dominating the royal diary with a series of high-profile solo engagements. But while she was winning the battle for the cameras, she was losing the war within the family. The resentment reached a boiling point on April 15th, 2024. When the King's honours list was released, Edward and his wife, Sophie, were glaringly absent. They had been carrying the heaviest workload of the entire family, yet they were denied any official recognition. A source close to the private office reported that the atmosphere during that week was nuclear. It was widely suspected that Camilla's inner circle had influenced the exclusions to ensure she remained the sole star of the King's reign. Edward's response was a masterstroke of institutional chess. He waited. He focused his energy on the family's most radioactive problem, Prince Andrew. On February 19, 2026, the world watched as Andrew was unceremoniously evicted from Royal Lodge and relocated to the remote wood farm at Sandringham. What the public missed was the man standing on the gravel, overseeing the logistics. It wasn't a royal aide or a lawyer. It was Edward. By taking charge of the Andrew crisis, Edward proved he was the only one capable of cleaning up the Windsor's deepest messes without causing a PR catastrophe. The visual confirmation of this power shift occurred on April 5, 2026, at St. George's Chapel. During the Easter service, the seating was a map of the new reality. Edward and his son stood shoulder to shoulder with Prince William and the Wales family. Camilla was physically distanced, flanked only by her own retinue. The message was unmistakable. The future king has chosen his allies, and they are not in the Queen's camp. 2 days ago, on April 25, the data finally validated the strategy. YouGov's latest internal briefing revealed that Camilla's favorability has plummeted to a record low of 42%. Meanwhile, Edward has surged to 51%. In the world of a constitutional monarchy, those numbers are the only currency that matters. Which brings us to this morning, April 27th. A document has been leaked from the Office of the Privy Council regarding urgent amendments to the Regency Act. This is the nuclear option of royal law. It outlines the legal mechanism for what happens if the king can no longer perform his duties. The leaked drafts suggest a profound shift in who would hold the Council of State authority. As we speak, the lawyers at Whitehall are debating a clause that could effectively sideline the Queen Consort in favour of a Regency Council dominated by William and Edward. The shadow of a new reign is no longer a theory, it is being written into law at this very hour. And as the sun sets over London today, the question isn't whether Camilla will fight back, but whether there is anyone left in the palace willing to take her side. To understand the true magnitude of the crisis unfolding at Buckingham Palace this Monday morning, April 27, 2026, we must look beyond the tabloid gossip and examine the hard data now circulating through the corridors of Whitehall. This is what insiders are calling the Edward 15 dossier, a reference to the prince's 15th place in the line of succession versus his skyrocketing institutional influence. At precisely 9:15 a.m. today, a high-level briefing document was leaked from the Cabinet Office. The document, classified under the internal tracking code Romeo Tango 2026 Echo Delta, is an exhaustive intelligence report compiled by YouGov. It doesn't just measure popularity, it measures the viability of the monarchy itself. The findings are devastating for the Queen Consort. While her general approval rating has slipped to 42%, the data regarding the under 35 demographic is described in the report as statistically catastrophic. Among the youth, the very generation that will decide if the monarchy survives into the next decade, Queen Camilla's trust rating has cratered to a staggering 28%. This is not merely a PR problem, it is a structural threat. The Edward 15 dossier was not generated in a vacuum. It was cross-referenced with data from the Office for National Statistics and the Home Office. These are the heavyweights of the British state apparatus. When the Home Office begins tracking the public sentiment volatility regarding a specific member of the royal family, it signals that the government is preparing for potential civil unrest or a fundamental shift in state funding. The real danger for Camilla lies in a little-known but powerful legislative mechanism, the Civil List Act. In the high-stakes world of royal finance, public money is not a birthright, it is a contract. Under the current oversight protocols, there is an unwritten viability threshold of 40%. If a senior royal's sustained public approval falls below this mark, their taxpayer-funded budget for staff, travel, and security can be formally questioned by the Public Accounts Committee. As we speak, reports are emerging that a group of members of Parliament are preparing to invoke this very mechanism during the upcoming parliamentary session in June. One senior official was heard remarking in a closed-door meeting, "If the public isn't buying the product, why are we still paying for the marketing?" The consequence is clear. Camilla is facing a financial and operational guillotine. Her entire network of influence, her private secretaries, her press team, and her international tours could be defunded by the end of the summer. But who stands to gain from this institutional hemorrhage? Look at the other side of the ledger. The same YouGov report shows that Prince Edward has achieved something previously thought impossible for a minor royal. By maintaining a quiet, scandal-free presence, he has become the anchor of trust for the institution. While Camilla's numbers bleed out, Edward's favorability has been described by the Office for National Statistics as remarkably resilient across all demographics. The mechanism is now in motion. Step 1. The leak of the negative data. Step 2. The triggering of the Civil List Act debate. Step 3. The inevitable voluntary reduction of the Queen's public role to save the institution from further damage. Edward isn't just standing by, he is the beneficiary of a system that is correcting itself. As the Prince of Wales focuses on his father's health, Edward has effectively become the guardian of the family's political capital. The dossier is on the desk of every major political player in London this morning. The question that remains, haunting the halls of the palace, is how a man who was once invisible managed to secure the most powerful data-driven mandate in modern royal history, and what he plans to do with it by nightfall. How does a man who was practically invisible for 3 decades suddenly dismantle the power structure of the most famous monarchy on earth? To answer that, we have to look at the power vacuum strategy, a cold, 5-step tactical masterclass that Edward has been quietly executing while the world was distracted by louder scandals. This isn't a theory, it is an operational reality that reached its critical mass this morning, April 27th. The first step was field occupancy. While Queen Camilla increasingly narrowed her focus to domestic high society events in London, Edward took to the global stage. Throughout 2025, he accepted the grueling, long-haul diplomatic tours that the Queen Consort reportedly declined. From the 50th anniversary of independence in Papua New Guinea to a high-stakes cultural mission in Japan alongside his wife, Sophie, Edward was on the ground. He wasn't just representing the king, he was building a secondary base of international clout. He became the face of the UK government abroad, ensuring that when the power vacuum opened at home, he was already seen as the most reliable senior diplomat in the family. Step 2 was the synchronization of the shadow diary. Behind the scenes, the communications teams for the Duke of Edinburgh and the Prince of Wales began operating on a shared, encrypted schedule. They didn't just coordinate, they synchronized to create a new generation narrative that purposefully excluded Camilla. If you look at the major royal events of the last 6 months, Edward and William are consistently framed together a visual alliance of the bloodline. Meanwhile, Camilla's engagements were left to stand alone, drifting further away from the institution's long-term future. But the most devastating move was Step 3, alliance activation. This was spearheaded by Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. In the world of royal theatre, a spouse's absence is a weapon. Sophie began a series of strategic no-shows at events where Camilla was the lead. The official reason was often under the weather, but the timing was too precise to be a coincidence. By withdrawing her support, Sophie shattered the image of the united front. Without the Duchess by her side, the Queen Consort appeared isolated, a solitary figure trying to hold a line that was already crumbling behind her. Step 4 involved the exploitation of a fatal strategic error, Camilla's overexposure. As King Charles's health struggles forced him into seclusion, Camilla pushed her personal brand into the spotlight. In the high-stakes game of royal PR, this was a massive miscalculation. While Edward remained the steadfast worker, Camilla's constant presence at gala after gala, while her husband was recovering, created a public perception of a premature power grab. Edward didn't have to attack her, he simply had to stay quiet and let the public's discomfort with her vibe of urgency grow. Finally, we reached the 5th step, the PR breakpoint. This morning's leak of the YouGov data wasn't an accident. It was the final activation of a pressure campaign. By allowing the world to see that her approval has hit a terminal floor of 42%, the Edward-William axis has created a reality where Camilla's presence is now a liability to the Crown's survival. The mechanism is now complete. The Queen Consort has been effectively quarantined within her own palace. She has the title, she has the Tudor crown brooch, but she no longer has the machinery of the state. As the clock ticks toward the afternoon briefing at the Home Office, the question isn't how Camilla will respond to Edward, it's whether she even realizes that the exit she's being steered toward has already been locked from the outside. The quietest man in the room didn't just speak. He rewrote the rules of the game while everyone else was still learning the board. The silence radiating from Windsor Castle has reached a deafening pitch. As of 11:30 a.m. today, April 27th, 2026, a chilling reality has set in. King Charles III has not been seen in his primary office for 48 consecutive hours. For a monarch who famously obsesses over his red boxes and daily briefings, this disappearance from the operational heart of the palace is more than a medical concern. It is a signal that the sunrise contingency has been activated. While the public was distracted by flickering lights and jewelry choices, the real movement was happening in the dead of night. At precisely 23:15 hours last night, a single, unescorted black Jaguar XJ was seen exiting the gates of Kensington Palace. It did not take the usual route toward central London. Instead, it moved at high speed toward Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park. Initially, observers assumed this was a late-night visit to the disgraced Prince Andrew. But the truth is far more strategic. The Prince of Wales was not there to discuss his uncle's exile. He was there for an emergency summit with the man who now holds the keys to the castle's internal security, Prince Edward. This midnight meeting, lasting until 3:45 this morning, marks the official formation of what insiders are now calling the Regency Alliance. The escalation has moved from the symbolic to the legal. We have uncovered that over the weekend, Queen Camilla attempted to exercise a rare and controversial use of the royal prerogative. Her objective? To bypass the standard vetting process and appoint 3 of her closest personal advisors to the board of the Crown Estate, the multi-billion-pound portfolio that funds the monarchy's very existence. This was a move designed to secure her financial and political future before any potential transition of power. But she hit a wall she never expected. Prince Edward, acting in his capacity as a lead executor of the late Prince Philip's private will, and a senior trustee of the Royal Archives, signed a formal notice of suspension regarding these appointments. This is a direct, unprecedented legal confrontation. Edward is not just using his current title, he is invoking the dead hand of Prince Philip. He is utilizing specific, long-dormant clauses in the late Duke of Edinburgh's estate papers to block any major administrative changes to the Crown's assets during a period of sovereign incapacity. A source close to the Lord Chancellor's office described the scene when Camilla's legal team received the notice. It was as if the room turned to ice. Edward didn't send a letter. He sent a legal shutdown. He essentially told the Queen that the checkbook is closed until the Prince of Wales says otherwise. This is the Chien Dik Bing Min Operation Sunrise. It is the systematic dismantling of the Queen Consort's influence by the bloodline heirs. The mechanism is simple but lethal. Camilla is attempting to use the king's authority while he is unable to defend it. In response, Edward and William are using the king's legacy to freeze the system entirely. As we move into the afternoon of April 27th, the atmosphere at Windsor is described as a legal war zone. Camilla's inner circle is reportedly scrambling to find a loophole in the Regency Act of 1937 to override Edward's suspension. But they are running out of time. With the king's continued absence from his desk, every hour that passes strengthens the argument for a formal transfer of power to William. The most disturbing detail? A document was spotted on a courier's desk at the Ministry of Justice this morning. It bore the royal seal and a single handwritten note on the corner. Proceed to Stage 2. No one knows exactly what Stage 2 entails, but the Black Jaguar has just returned to Kensington Palace, and the Prince of Wales is reportedly preparing an unscheduled televised address. The crown isn't just being contested, it's being surrounded. As the clocks across London strike midday on this fateful Monday, April 27th, 2026, we are witnessing the final moves in a game of constitutional chess that has been played in the shadows for years. The question is no longer whether the power structure of the British monarchy will change, but how violent the collision will be. Based on the intelligence gathered from the Cabinet Office and the whispers echoing through the Long Gallery at Windsor, we can now map out the 3 potential scenarios for the next 72 hours. The first scenario is the public fallout. This is the unstable path. In this version of reality, Queen Camilla refuses to accept the tactical isolation imposed by Edward and William. She goes rogue, utilizing her remaining media contacts to launch a counter-offensive, leaking damaging dossiers on the bloodline royals to distract from her tanking poll numbers. This would trigger a media war not seen since the 1990s, potentially shattering public trust in the monarchy entirely. But with the Home Office already monitoring institutional stability, this path seems increasingly suicidal for all involved. The second scenario is the lingering status quo. Here, King Charles remains in a state of suspended animation, partially capable but largely absent. The Cold War between the Queen Consort's camp and the Duke of Edinburgh's alliance continues to simmer, with each side blocking the other's appointments and initiatives. This is the scenario most feared by the City of London. The financial markets hate uncertainty, and a divided palace means a weak UK brand. However, there is a third path, the one our sources indicate is already in motion. We are calling it the Edward Maneuver. The mechanism is a letters patent. At this very moment, lawyers at the Ministry of Justice are reportedly finalizing the language for a royal decree that would appoint Prince William as Prince Regent. This is the surgical strike. Under this arrangement, William assumes the full powers of the sovereign without the king having to abdicate. Crucially, Prince Edward would be appointed as the Lord Protector of the royal household, an unofficial but all-powerful role overseeing the transition and logistics. This effectively forces Camilla into a Queen Dowager role ahead of schedule, providing her with a dignified but powerless retirement. The reason for this specific move? Follow the money. The financial titans in the City of London and the global diplomatic corps need the stability that the William-Edward axis provides. They have no interest in a protracted battle over Camilla's influence. They want a clean, professional, and modernized monarchy. But as we prepare for this historic shift, there is one chilling detail that has just surfaced, and it changes everything. Every British monarch has a meticulously planned funeral protocol. For King Charles, it is Operation Menai Bridge. Insiders report that at 0 to 900 hours this morning, a high-level update was pushed through the secure servers of the Lord Chamberlain's office. There has been a reprioritization in the access and notification list. For the first time in history, the Queen Consort's name has been moved down the list, placed below Princess Anne and Prince Edward. Why would the protocol for a reigning queen be downgraded while the king is still alive? And what exactly was in that red leather briefcase that Edward was seen carrying out of the king's private study at 3 a.m. this morning? There are whispers of an atomic file, a document so sensitive it details the true nature of the king's health, and the door to the inner sanctum is closing, but the secrets are leaking out. If you want to stay ahead of the next major update in this breaking story, you need to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel right now. We are monitoring the palace frequencies 24/7. Do you think Camilla has one final card to play, or has Edward already delivered the checkmate? Let us know your theories in the comments. The sunrise contingency is active. Don't blink. We will be back with more as soon as the next document drops. At 9:15 a.m. yesterday, April 25, 2026, the sacred silence of the Scottish Highlands did not just break, it shattered. We are coming to you this morning with a breaking development that has sent shockwaves through the very foundations of the British monarchy. What was supposed to be a private, somber weekend for the Princess Royal at Balmoral Castle has instead become the flashpoint for the most explosive legal confrontation in modern royal history. Imagine the scene. The mist is still clinging to the granite walls of the late Queen Elizabeth's favourite retreat. Princess Anne, known for her clockwork precision and zero tolerance for nonsense, enters the historic dining room. This is the same room where world leaders once sat in hushed reverence. But instead of the quiet dignity of history, she is met with the blinding glare of high-intensity production lights, the chaotic hum of specialized film equipment, and the unmistakable, lingering smell of commercial catering. Witnesses describe the moment as nothing short of a volcanic eruption. Standing on the eastern lawns were 4 massive 10-ton production trucks, their tires marking the pristine turf that has been meticulously kept for decades. This was not a royal event. This was a high-budget, for-profit commercial documentary crew, and they were treating the inner sanctum of the crown like a cheap soundstage. When the Princess Royal demanded an immediate explanation, the lead producer, visibly trembling, did not offer an apology. Instead, he offered a document. According to staff present during the confrontation, the producer told the princess, and I quote, "We were told this was fully sanctioned. We have the signed authorization from Tom Parker Bowles himself." The audacity of that statement is what has turned a simple trespass into a full-scale constitutional crisis. Tom Parker Bowles, the son of the Queen Consort, was nowhere to be found. While his hand-picked crew was rearranging royal furniture and setting up cameras in rooms that are strictly off-limits to the public, Tom was reportedly in London, operating under the supreme confidence that his status as the king's stepson made him untouchable. Princess Anne's response was immediate and lethal. She did not call a secretary. She did not send a polite note. She turned to the commanding officer of the Specialist Protection Group and issued a direct order that has now been immortalized in the official security log, entry number BM 202604. She reportedly said, "I want every single person who is not staff or family off this property within 60 minutes. If they are still here at 10:15, have them removed in handcuffs." This is the volcanic moment that has changed everything. It is no longer just about unauthorized filming, it is about the desacralization of the late Queen's memory. For Princess Anne, Balmoral is not a set. It is the heart of her mother's legacy. To see it sold off to the highest bidder by a family member who holds no official royal rank is a betrayal that defies words. As we dive deeper into this investigative report, we want to hear from you. Was Princess Anne justified in her volcanic reaction, or is this a sign of a family feud spiraling out of control? Head to the comments section right now and let us know your thoughts. If you believe the sanctity of royal heritage should be protected at all costs, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for our continuous, hour-by-hour coverage of this developing scandal. We are monitoring the legal filings as they happen, and you do not want to miss our next update. The investigation has since revealed that the production crew was operating under a gatekeeper scheme. Tom Parker Bowles had allegedly positioned himself as a secret liaison, charging massive access fees to media companies under the guise of royal approval. He wasn't just a food critic anymore. He was a broker of the Crown's private property. By 10 a.m. yesterday, the eastern lawns were a scene of frantic retreat. The production crew scrambled to pack hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of equipment as the Princess Royal watched from the stone steps, her arms crossed, her resolve ironclad. This was the moment the checked privilege of the Parker Bowles circle hit a brick wall named Anne. And as of this morning, April 26th, the legal war has only just begun. The papers have been filed, the security logs have been seized, and for the first time in history, a princess is taking the Queen Consort's son to court. Stay with us as we uncover exactly how this illicit scheme was hidden for months, and who else in the palace might have been looking the other way. The question on everyone's mind this morning, April 26th, is simple. How did a food critic with no official royal standing manage to sell the keys to the United Kingdom's most secure fortresses? To understand the magnitude of the scandal Princess Anne has uncovered, we have to look past the velvet curtains and into the mechanics of what investigators are now calling a royal parasite operation. This wasn't a series of clumsy mistakes, it was a sophisticated, 3-step blueprint designed to monetize the British monarchy from the inside out. The first phase of the scheme was the creation of virtual power. Tom Parker Bowles reportedly understood that in the world of high-stakes media, perception is more valuable than reality. By strategically using his position as the son of the Queen Consort, he created an aura of untouchable influence. When approaching international streaming giants, he didn't just walk in as a writer, he walked in as the ultimate royal insider. In meetings held at exclusive London clubs, he allegedly whispered that he was the unofficial gatekeeper for King Charles and Queen Camilla. To a production executive in New York or Los Angeles, the distinction between a working royal and the Queen's son was blurred by the sheer gravity of his family connection, but prestige alone wasn't enough to seal the deals. The second step, and the most legally damaging, was the trust trigger. To convince corporate lawyers that these projects were legitimate, Tom reportedly produced documents that looked indistinguishable from official palace correspondence. Princess Anne's legal team has seized a trove of these papers, featuring the iconic Buckingham Palace letterhead and sophisticated forgeries of high-level administrative seals. These weren't just letters, they were the keys to the vault. One source close to the investigation claims that when a production firm questioned the legality of filming in the private quarters of Windsor Castle, they were shown a memorandum of understanding that appeared to have the full sanction of the Lord Chamberlain's office. It was a masterclass in deception, turning the most respected symbols of the British state into tools for a private commercial venture. The third and final step was the financial harvest. By positioning himself as a consultant or liaison, Tom was able to demand what he called access coordination fees. We are talking about staggering sums of money. Reports indicate up to £500,000 per contract. This money wasn't going to the Crown Estate or the sovereign grant to help maintain these historic buildings. Instead, it was being diverted into a complex web of private accounts. Perhaps the most chilling revelation uncovered by Princess Anne's forensic accountants just hours ago is the existence of a shell company, registered in the Isle of Man, a well-known offshore financial centre. This entity served as the primary landing zone for these illicit access fees. By routing the money through the Isle of Man, the scheme was shielded from the prying eyes of standard palace audits for months. This was not a one-time lapse in judgment at Balmoral. The Princess Royal's team has now traced this pattern across 12 separate contracts, involving not just the Scottish Highlands, but the Sandringham estate, and even the most private corridors of Windsor Castle itself. Every time Tom Parker Bowles walked into a royal residence for a family visit, he was potentially scouting locations for his next £500,000 payout. The betrayal isn't just financial, it's a systematic exploitation of a family's trust and a nation's heritage. But as the money trail leads closer to the heart of the palace, a new, more terrifying question is beginning to emerge. Could a scheme this elaborate, spanning years and multiple estates, truly have been carried out by one man alone? The deeper Anne digs into the Isle of Man records, the more it seems that the royal parasite may have had help from the very top. The investigation into the Balmoral breach has moved beyond the shock of the discovery and into the cold, calculated black chronology of the operation. This was not a spontaneous lapse in judgment. It was a methodical siege of royal privacy that was months in the making. As of this morning, April 26, 2026, the timeline of betrayal has been fully reconstructed by the Princess Royal's legal team, revealing a level of premeditation that is as chilling as it is professional. The ink on this betrayal was first dried in November 2025. In the plush, clandestine suites of the Ritz in London, Tom Parker Bowles reportedly sat down with executives from a major American streaming platform. Far from the prying eyes of palace officials, a secret contract was signed. The promise? Unprecedented, never-before-seen access to the private heart of the British monarchy. This meeting was the architect's blueprint for everything that followed, a multi-million-pound deal predicated on the assumption that the royal residences were Tom's personal playground to sell. By February 15, 2026, the operation moved from negotiation to fabrication. Investigators have traced a series of specialized printing and stamping activities to a private office in Chelsea. It was here that the trust trigger was manufactured. Documents were produced on high-grade parchment, embossed with the royal arms and featuring the forged signatures of palace administrators. This was the paper armor Tom intended to use to shield himself from security inquiries. Every stamp was a deliberate step toward fraud, ensuring that when the time came, his production team would look like they were on official business, sanctioned by the Crown itself. The infiltration began in earnest on April 20th, 2026. Under the cover of early morning mist, heavy equipment crates began arriving at Balmoral Castle. The cover story was ingenious. Essential audio, visual maintenance for the royal sound systems. Security personnel, seeing the forged Chelsea documents and knowing Tom's family connection, allowed the trucks to pass without a second thought. For 5 days, while the castle was supposed to be in a state of quiet preparation for the Princess Royal, it was being transformed into a commercial soundstage. Cables were snaked through historic hallways, and lighting rigs were anchored near centuries-old portraits. The clock finally ran out yesterday, April 25th. At exactly 2:47 p.m., Princess Anne walked into the middle of a live shoot in the historic dining room. The collision was instantaneous. Witnesses say the air in the room seemed to freeze as the princess took in the scale of the intrusion. Her reaction was a masterclass in controlled fury. She didn't just stop the cameras, she issued a 60-minute ultimatum. Every truck, every camera, and every person involved was given 1 hour to vacate the premises or face immediate arrest for criminal trespass. By 3:47 p.m., the Scottish Highlands saw a frantic exodus of production staff, leaving behind a trail of marked turf and a royal family in ruins. But the most staggering development occurred just hours ago, on the morning of April 26th. As the legal investigation reached a fever pitch, bank records now show an emergency transfer of significant funds. Queen Camilla has reportedly moved a massive sum of money from her private accounts directly into Tom Parker Bowles' legal defense fund. This is no longer just a mother helping a son. It is an act of institutional defiance. By funding his defense against Princess Anne's lawsuit, the Queen Consort has officially picked a side. The question that is now tearing through the palace corridors is no longer about a filming project, it is about a mother's loyalty versus a queen's duty. And as the sun sets over London today, the world is waiting to see if the king will choose his sister's law or his wife's son. As the clock struck 11 p.m. last night, April 25th, 2026, the fragile peace within the House of Windsor was officially replaced by an open, scorched earth conflict. High-level sources at Both Street, James's Palace and Clarence House have confirmed that a heated, late-night telephone conversation took place between the Princess Royal and the Queen Consort. This was not a sister-in-law discussing family matters. It was a collision between two irreconcilable visions of the monarchy. On one end of the line, Camilla was fighting to save her son. On the other, Princess Anne was fighting to save the crown. The strategic subtext of this call was a desperate attempt at financial whitewashing. According to palace insiders, Queen Camilla proposed a massive, immediate financial settlement to make the entire Balmoral scandal disappear. Her plan was simple: use personal funds to fully reimburse the American streaming companies and the various contractors who had paid Tom Parker Bowles for access. The goal was to remove the victims from the equation, thereby stripping the legal case of its primary witnesses. If the money was repaid, Camilla argued, the misunderstanding could be settled quietly, behind closed doors, away from the prying eyes of the press. But Princess Anne's response was ice cold. She reportedly viewed this offer not as an act of maternal kindness, but as an attempt at bribery to cover up a criminal pattern. To Anne, the issue isn't just about the money, it's about the forgery of royal seals and the systematic deception of the public. Allowing a family member to buy their way out of a fraud investigation would set a catastrophic precedent, effectively signaling that the Parker Bowles family is above the law. The Princess Royal's position is uncompromising. The legal system is not a negotiation, and justice is not for sale. The conflict took an even more technical and dramatic turn when Camilla attempted to tap into the privy purse the sovereign's private income, to facilitate this quiet reconciliation. In a move that showcases her profound influence within the royal administration, Princess Anne reportedly moved to block the transaction at the Internal Audit Department before the transfer could even be initiated. By early this morning, April 26th, the financial stalemate had reached a fever pitch. Anne has essentially locked the royal vault against Camilla's attempts to bail out her son, forcing the Queen Consort to look toward her own private, external assets to fund what is now becoming a multi-million-pound legal defense. The climax of this late-night confrontation came when Princess Anne delivered what is being described as a sovereign ultimatum to King Charles himself. She has stripped away all the grey areas, leaving her brother with a choice that will define the rest of his reign. The message was clear: family or justice. There is no middle ground. Anne has made it known that if the king attempts to interfere or quash the investigation to protect his stepson, she will not hesitate to let the formal legal proceedings and the mountain of evidence they contain become a matter of public record in a court of law. As the sun rose over London this morning, the palace is a house divided. The Queen Consort is allegedly in a state of fury, feeling betrayed by a sister-in-law she once considered an ally. Meanwhile, Princess Anne remains entrenched at St. James's Palace, surrounded by her legal team, awaiting the king's response. The volcanic moment at Balmoral has evolved into a strategic siege at the highest levels of power. Every decision made in the next few hours carries the weight of the monarchy's future. Will the king side with the wife who stands by her son, or the sister who stands by the law? The answer may lie in a set of confidential bank records that have just been flagged by the royal audit, and the name on those records is not Tom Parker Bowles. While the world's attention has been focused on the volcanic confrontation between the Princess Royal and the Queen Consort, a new and perhaps more significant power centre has just entered the fray. The silence from Kensington Palace over the last 24 hours has been deafening. But as of this morning, April 26, 2026, we have learned that the Prince of Wales is no longer just a spectator. Behind the scenes, Prince William has reportedly taken a definitive stand that could seal Tom Parker Bowles' legal fate. In a sensational update that has rocked the legal teams at Clarence House, sources close to the investigation reveal that Prince William has authorized the release of a confidential digital dossier to Princess Anne's lawyers. This file is said to contain a meticulously documented history of Tom's past attempts to leverage royal access incidents that were previously handled quietly and kept out of the public eye. By providing this evidence, William is effectively handing his aunt the ammunition she needs to prove a long-standing pattern of behavior. This isn't just about one afternoon at Balmoral anymore. It is about a decade of alleged exploitation that the future king is no longer willing to tolerate. This move by the Prince of Wales highlights a deep-seated resentment that has been simmering within the royal family for years. To understand why this is happening now, one only has to look at the contrast between Tom Parker Bowles and Princess Anne's own children, Zara Tindall and Peter Phillips. For years, the public has watched Zara and Peter build successful, independent careers in equestrianism and sports management. They have scrupulously avoided using royal titles and have never once been accused of using a palace letterhead to secure a business deal. They are the gold standard of private royals who work for their living. The discovery that Tom was reportedly charging £500,000 access fees, while Zara and Peter were out earning every penny on their own merit, has created a toxic atmosphere in the palace. One courtier described the mood as a total breakdown of trust. The narrative of the hard-working royal children versus the freeloading stepson is no longer just a tabloid headline. It is the central argument in a legal battle for the soul of the monarchy. But the most immediate threat to Tom Parker Bowles isn't just family resentment, it is a specific, rarely invoked legal mechanism. As of 9 a.m. today, the breach of trust clause under the Crown Estate Act has been formally activated. In the world of royal law, this is the nuclear option. Under this act, Any individual who uses a royal asset for unauthorized private gain can be held liable not just for the money they made, but for the damage they caused to the institution's integrity. This elevates the case from a simple contract dispute to an institutional crisis. The clock is now ticking. A formal notice of intent was delivered to Tom's legal team exactly 3 hours ago. They have been given a strict 48-hour deadline to provide a full, unredacted list of every commercial entity Tom has communicated with regarding royal property. If that deadline passes without a complete disclosure, Princess Anne's team has made it clear they will move for a discovery mandate, which would allow investigators to seize Tom's personal servers and financial records. As we move into this critical 48-hour window, the tension in London is palpable. The Prince of Wales's involvement suggests that the younger generation of royals is aligning with Princess Anne to clean house. But as the investigators prepare to dig into Tom's servers, a new, even more disturbing rumor is circulating among the staff at Windsor. It suggests that the Kensington dossier contains more than just Tom's emails. It reportedly contains proof of a silent partner within the palace walls, someone who wasn't just looking the other way, but was actively helping Tom bypass security. If that name comes to light before the 48-hour deadline, the British monarchy may be facing a scandal that even the king cannot stop. As the 48-hour deadline looms over the Parker Bowles legal team, the British monarchy stands at a crossroads that will define its survival in the 21st century. The investigation launched by Princess Anne has moved beyond the discovery phase and into the realm of high-stakes strategy. Our legal analysts have mapped out 3 potential paths for this crisis, and each one carries a different price for the House of Windsor. The first path, the best-case scenario for the institution, is a total surrender. In this kitsch ban, Tom Parker Bowles would issue a full admission of guilt, return every penny of the estimated £6 million earned through his illicit access fees, and consent to a lifetime ban from every royal residence. This would effectively remove the royal parasite from the system without a public trial. However, our insiders put the probability of this at a mere 10%. Why? Because Princess Anne is not interested in a quiet apology. She believes that for the crown to be respected, the consequence must be visible. And Tom's legal team, reportedly emboldened by the Queen Consort's financial backing, is still preparing for a fight. The second path is the worst-case scenario, a full public trial in a London courtroom. This would be the most damaging media circus in a century. We are talking about the Queen Consort potentially being called as a witness to explain the emergency transfers from her private accounts. There are already whispers of obstruction of justice charges being prepared if it can be proven that any palace official helped Tom hide the money trail. This would plunge King Charles III's reign into a crisis of confidence from which it might never recover. The probability of this nuclear option is sitting at 30%, as Anne's resolve to see justice in the light remains unshakable. The most realistic path, however, is the strategic exile. Our sources suggest that a deal is being whispered in the corridors of the Home Office. In this scenario, Tom Parker Bowles would be forced into a voluntary and permanent exile from the United Kingdom, likely relocating to a private estate in France or Italy. In exchange for his departure, the criminal fraud investigation would be suspended to save the king from public embarrassment. However, Princess Anne would maintain her civil lawsuit as a legal sword over his head, ensuring that he can never again profit from the royal name. This 60% probability path provides the cleansing Anne demands while preventing the institutional collapse the king fears. But as of 1 hour ago, a new piece of evidence has surfaced that makes all of these scenarios look terrifyingly unpredictable. Investigators reviewing the Chelsea forgeries, the documents used to trick the film crews, have found a digital signature embedded in the metadata. This is not a random serial number, it is a high-level access code, a digital cipher that is only issued to a handful of senior members within the royal household to authorize secure communications. The code found on Tom's forged documents matches the encrypted passcode of a senior member of the king's inner circle. This means Tom Parker Bowles didn't just guess the palace protocols. He was allegedly given the digital keys by an accomplice who sits at the very top of the royal hierarchy. The question has shifted from, "What did Tom do?" to, "Who in the palace helped him sell out the crown?" The name behind that digital signature is so explosive that it could redraw the entire royal family tree by tomorrow morning. We are working to verify the identity of this silent partner as we speak. This is a story that is changing every 60 minutes. And the next update will be the most critical one yet. If you want to be the first to know the name revealed in that digital dossier, you must stay tuned. Head down to the comments right now and tell us, who do you think would have the power and the motive to help Tom Parker Bowles bypass royal security? Is it someone close to the king or someone from the Queen Consort's own staff? Share your theories below. We read every single one. And if you found this investigative report valuable, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel with all notifications turned on. Our special report on the secret accomplice is coming to you tomorrow morning, and you cannot afford to miss it. The 48-hour clock is ticking, and the truth is about to break the palace wide open. Stay with us. At exactly 10 o'clock this morning, London time, on this 24th day of April, 2026, the heavy oak doors of the High Court swung open to a sight the world has been anticipating for 3 long years. Tom Bower, the man who has systematically dismantled the Sussex narrative, stepped onto the pavement carrying a navy blue leather folder. It was marked with 3 words that have sent shockwaves through the halls of Buckingham Palace and the boardrooms of Montecito. Strictly confidential. This is not just another headline. This is the activation of an ultimatum from the infamous Room 73, the legal epicenter where the British establishment finally stops being polite. But the real explosion happened 4,000 miles away. At 8:15 a.m. California time, while the morning mist was still clinging to the hills of Santa Barbara, a black SUV with federal plates came to a halt at the gates of the Montecito mansion. A courier, acting on behalf of the IRS office in Laguna Niguel, delivered a document that changes everything. It is summons number 2026-X4. In the world of federal tax law, this is the nuclear option. If you are watching this right now, you are witnessing the precise moment the Sussex House of Cards stops wobbling and starts to collapse. Make sure you hit the like button right now and subscribe to this channel, because the documents we are analyzing today are being scrubbed from the internet as we speak. Comment transparency below if you believe no one, not even a prince, should be above the law. The IRS, Criminal Investigation Division, known as the CI, does not move unless they are certain. Their target? Form 1040 of the Archwell Foundation. According to the navy blue folder held by Tom Bower, there is a discrepancy of $3,400,000. This is not a clerical error. This is a massive financial crater. Investigators are now utilizing a mechanism known as a lifestyle audit. The mechanism of a lifestyle audit is cold, clinical, and devastating. It works in 3 distinct steps. Step 1. The IRS calculates the total cost of a subject's lifestyle, the private jets, the security teams, the 16-bathroom mansion, and the designer wardrobe. Step 2. They compare that total against the officially reported income on their tax filings. Step 3. If the spending exceeds the reported income for 3 consecutive years, a red flag is triggered. The immediate consequence? The total revocation of tax-exempt status and the immediate freezing of all associated assets. A source close to the investigation reported a brief but chilling exchange at the gates of the estate this morning. As the summons was handed over, a member of the Sussex security detail reportedly asked if this could be handled through lawyers. The courier's response was reportedly short and final. He said, "This isn't an invitation for a meeting. This is a notification of a forensic seizure." Tom Bower, speaking to a small huddle of reporters outside the court, was heard saying that the mask of charity has finally cracked. He noted that the money from Princess Diana's inheritance has been exhausted, and the global lifestyle they have projected is no longer supported by their bank statements. He said, The IRS is no longer asking questions. They are counting every single penny. For the audience watching this unfold, the question is no longer about royal drama. It is about the legal accountability of a brand built on a foundation of shifting sand. We have been tracking the Archwell filings for years, and the numbers never added up. But seeing the IRS Criminal Investigation Division take the lead indicates that this has moved beyond a civil dispute. This is now a criminal inquiry into the flow of millions of dollars that were supposed to be for impact, but instead seem to have funded a life of luxury that neither Netflix nor Spotify is willing to pay for anymore. This morning's events at the High Court and the Montecito gates are a synchronized strike. The ultimatum from Room 73 is clear. Provide the receipts or lose the titles. The era of the private royal is over, replaced by the reality of a federal defendant. Stay with us as we dive deeper into the navy blue folder and reveal the names of the high-profile donors who are now scrambling to distance themselves from the Sussexes before the IRS knocks on their doors next. Do not look away. The truth is coming out in real time, and we have the only map through the wreckage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You cannot afford to miss what we have uncovered in the next section. To understand the magnitude of the summons delivered to Montecito this morning, we have to look back at the trail of breadcrumbs that led to this precise moment. This was not a series of unfortunate accidents. It was a programmed collapse. When you connect the dots across the last decade, a chilling pattern emerges, a sequence of events where every calculated move by the Sussexes has ultimately become the instrument of their own undoing. The blueprint for this disaster was drawn in July 2016 at the Soho House in London. For years, the world was sold a story of a blind date and a chance encounter. But Tom Bower's investigators have highlighted a different reality. Marcus Anderson, the ultimate Soho House insider, did not just facilitate a meeting, he engineered a psychological environment. While Prince Harry believed he was falling for a fairy tale, the Mediterranean files suggest he was walking into a meticulously choreographed production. The immediate consequence was a prince who became detached from his institution, guided by a hand that had spent years navigating the high-stakes corridors of power and influence. The strategy worked until the moment the silence was broken. In January 2023, the publication of the memoir Spare was intended to be a global triumph. Instead, it became a legal self-indictment. By recording his own voice for the audio version, Harry did more than just tell his story. He provided sworn testimony of hard drug use, from cocaine to magic mushrooms. Under Section 212 of the United States Immigration and Nationality Act, these admissions are not just confessions, they are grounds for an immediate visa denial and permanent inadmissibility. He didn't just write a book, he handed the Department of Homeland Security the key to his own cage. By February 2025, the financial floor finally gave way. Netflix, the $100 million anchor of their American dream, quietly declined to renew their contract. The industry's verdict was unanimous. The Sussexes had run out of secrets to sell. The content was hollow, the Jam brand was struggling, and the production costs for their lifestyle were spiraling. When the Hollywood checks stopped clearing, the Archwell Foundation was left exposed, leading directly to the $3 million discrepancy we are seeing in the IRS filings today. The desperation peaked just months ago, in January 2026, during the ill-fated tour of Sydney, Australia. Attempting to sell high-priced wellness retreats for over $2,600 Australian dollars, the couple faced a public that was no longer buying the performance. Their approval rating in the Commonwealth plummeted to a catastrophic 12%. They were no longer viewed as royals. They were seen as commercial entities who had lost their market value. And that brings us to this morning, April 28, 2026. The release of the Mediterranean Files by Tom Bower has moved the yacht girl narrative from the fringes of the internet to the center of mainstream investigative journalism. These files don't just contain rumors, they contain timestamps, manifests, and photographs from the yacht Arawak. They document a period of Meghan's life in the Mediterranean, long before the world knew her name, that contradicts the official biography in every significant detail. The question that everyone is asking now, as they look at the navy blue folder in Tom Bower's hand, is not just what Meghan was doing on those yachts, but who was paying for the lifestyle then, and are those same shadowy figures still pulling the strings from behind the scenes today? The timeline is complete, the evidence is mounting, and the shadows are finally beginning to speak. What lies within those Mediterranean logs is the one thing the Sussexes thought they had successfully buried forever. While the public is captivated by the drama of the navy blue folder in London, a much more clinical and devastating process is unfolding within the federal corridors of Washington, D.C. The legal immunity that has protected Prince Harry for the last 3 years is not just fading, it is being systematically dismantled. This is no longer a debate about royal etiquette. It is about the cold, hard mechanics of United States immigration law and the reality that no one, regardless of their bloodline, is immune to the consequences of their own admissions. The mechanism being activated right now is a forced reclassification of status. For years, Harry has resided in California under an own visa, a category reserved exclusively for high-ranking diplomats and those performing official duties for a foreign government. But the Heritage Foundation, a powerful legal watchdog, has spent years arguing that Harry's presence in the US is a violation of the law. Their lawsuit has finally reached a critical trigger point. By successfully forcing the Department of Homeland Security to unseal the records, they have exposed a massive discrepancy between what was claimed on his entry application and what was admitted in his memoir, Spare. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, specifically Section 212, any non-citizen who admits to a drug-related offense is subject to immediate visa denial or revocation. In his own words, recorded and sold to millions, Harry confessed to using cocaine, cannabis, and hallucinogens. In a standard immigration case, this would lead to a summary deportation, but the hammer is falling now because of a rare cross-agency data match. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division has reportedly shared its findings with the Department of Homeland Security, proving that Harry no longer possesses a stable, official income. The legal logic is brutal. If you are not performing official diplomatic duties, you cannot hold an ARN visa. If you have admitted to federal drug violations and you no longer possess the funds to be financially self-sufficient, you are classified as a public charge risk. The immediate consequence, according to sources within the Department of Homeland Security, is a downgrade. Harry is being moved from an A-only diplomat status to a B2 tourist visa. A B2 visa is a trap. It carries no work authorization, no diplomatic immunity, and most importantly, it triggers a 30-day ultimatum. This is the 30-day clock. Once the downgrade is finalized, Prince Harry will have exactly 30 days to leave the United States territory or face a formal, public order of deportation. The image of the King's son being escorted to an airport by federal agents is no longer a tabloid fantasy. It is a procedural reality currently being discussed in Room 73. But while Harry's clock is ticking, Meghan Markle is reportedly engaged in a desperate maneuver of her own. At precisely 11:45 a.m. yesterday, witnesses at the Santa Barbara County Registrar's Office reported seeing a high-security detail accompanying the Duchess as she attempted to file for an emergency passport renewal. The chilling detail? She was reportedly trying to re-verify her birth date as August 4, 1981. However, the Mediterranean files recently brought forward by Tom Bower have created a massive conflict in the federal database. If those files, which include historical school records and travel manifests, prove that her actual birth year is 1975, then every federal document she has signed in the last decade, including her marriage license and her U.S. passport applications, could be flagged as fraudulent. Falsifying a birth date to a federal agency is not a PR mistake, it is a felony. As Harry faces the 30-day countdown to deportation, Meghan is facing a system that no longer accepts her narrative. The protective shield of the Montecito mansion is dissolving, and the federal government is finally asking for the one thing the Sussexes cannot provide: the unvarnished truth. The investigation has now moved from the counting rooms of the IRS to a much darker theatre of operations: the Mediterranean coastline. As Tom Bower's Mediterranean files are unsealed, we are seeing data that the Sussexes have spent millions to keep in the shadows. This is no longer about a struggling actress finding her way. It is about a high-stakes intelligence failure. The center of this storm is a luxury yacht named the Arawak. Forensic travel logs and high-resolution photographs from the summer of 2014 place Meghan Markle on this vessel as it was moored in the exclusive port of Amalfi. But it is not the location that has triggered the alarm in London. It is the company she kept. The Arawak manifest reportedly lists several high-net-worth individuals who were already on an MI6 watch list for their ties to offshore money laundering and shadow influence. For a woman who would later marry the grandson of the Queen, these associations represent a catastrophic vetting failure that the British establishment is now retroactively dismantling. But the most jarring revelation in Tom Bower's dossier is not where she was, but who she actually is. For a decade, the world has accepted the date of August 4th, 1981. However, Tom Bower is now stating on the record that Meghan Markle was actually born in 1975. This 6-year discrepancy is the absolute zero point of the Sussex narrative. To back this up, a leaked transcript from the Immaculate Heart School has surfaced. The dates on these official academic records do not align with a woman born in 1981. They align perfectly with a woman born in the mid-70s. This is where the personal becomes the political. In a recorded statement that has gone viral across the Commonwealth this morning, Samantha Markle broke her long silence with a quote that has left commentators speechless. She said, "We've kept this secret for the sake of the family long enough. My sister didn't just lie to the world about her age to stay relevant in Hollywood. She lied about the very origins of her children. This suggests that the timeline of Archie's birth, which has been a subject of intense speculation for years, may be tied to a much larger web of deception involving her biological reality. In the eyes of the law, this is not a white lie. It is a void ab initio event. This is a Latin legal term meaning void from the beginning. This is the mechanism that should keep the Sussexes awake at night. If Meghan Markle provided a false birth date on her marriage license to Prince Harry, or on her official contracts with Netflix and Penguin Random House, the entire legal basis of those agreements is destroyed. Under void ab initio, a contract built on a fundamental fraudulent misrepresentation of identity is treated as if it never existed. This means the marriage could be legally challenged as invalid, and the $100 million contracts could be reclaimed by the corporations under fraud clauses. Even the children's titles and their place in the line of succession are now under the microscope of the Home Office. If the foundational identity of the mother is a fabrication, the legal status of the offspring becomes a constitutional crisis. As the sun sets on this 28th day of April, the question isn't whether the truth will come out, it is how much of the original Meghan Markle will be left once the layers of 1975 are stripped away. The Arawak was just the beginning. The deep-sea search for the truth is only getting started. While the legal fires continue to burn in California, the stone walls of Buckingham Palace have never looked more unyielding. This morning, at exactly 11 o'clock, the world witnessed a visual shift in the monarchy that carries more weight than any official statement. As the sun hit the palace balcony, a new formation emerged, one that the British press is already calling the new Fab Four. Standing centre stage were Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, flanked not by the chaos of Montecito, but by the steady, reliable presence of Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. This was a carefully choreographed image of stability, duty, and absolute unity. The message was unmistakable. The institution has evolved, it has survived, and it has moved on. For the audience watching this unfold, there was a profound sense of poetic justice. The drama that had plagued the palace for 7 years has been replaced by a quiet, professional resolve. However, it is what and who was missing that has sent the most powerful shockwave through the global media. Reliable sources within the Lord Chamberlain's office have confirmed that the guest list for the upcoming Great Anniversary celebrations has been finalized. For the first time in history, the names of Harry and Meghan have been completely and systematically omitted. They are not merely unlikely to attend, they have been deleted from the official record of the event. Behind this public exclusion lies a clinical legal strategy spearheaded by Prince William. In the private offices of the Duchy of Cornwall, a document known as Letters Patent has reportedly been drafted and is currently sitting in a high-security safe. To understand the gravity of this, one must understand the mechanism. Letters patent are the ultimate expression of the monarch's sovereign will. They are the legal instruments used to create, alter, or dissolve titles and rights of succession. The content of William's drafted decree is described by insiders as a total purge. It does not just suggest the removal of the Duke of Sussex title, it mandates it. It strips the His Royal Highness style permanently, and, most controversially, it removes Harry's entire lineage from the line of succession. This is the nuclear option of constitutional law. The mechanism is designed for a clean, complete, and final break. While the decree is reportedly set for activation the moment William ascends the throne, the mere existence of the paperwork serves as a terminal warning to Montecito. The reality of this isolation is beginning to set in with devastating force. High-level palace couriers have revealed a frantic scene behind the scenes. Within the last 24 hours, Prince Harry has reportedly placed 14 desperate calls to King Charles. Every single one of them was diverted. They did not reach the king's ear. They were intercepted and redirected to the voicemail of the private secretary. The king is no longer taking the calls. The door that Harry assumed would always remain a crack open has been bolted from the inside. For the public, there is a sense of closure in seeing the institution finally protect its own future. Catherine, who has spent a decade enduring the performative charisma of her sister-in-law, stood on that balcony today as a woman who has won the long game. She didn't have to fight, she simply had to wait for the truth to catch up. The new Fab Four represents a monarchy that no longer rewards disruption. As the crowd cheered in London, the silence in Montecito has never been louder. The purge is not coming, it is already here. As we stand at this crossroads on this 28th day of April, 2026, the raw data and the legal filings allow for only 3 potential endings to this saga. The window for a fairy tale resolution has slammed shut, leaving the Sussexes to face a scenario tree that is as brutal as it is inevitable. The first path, which our analysts give a 40% probability, is the divorce war. In this scenario, Meghan Markle realizes that the royal connection is no longer a shield, but a liability. Facing the crushing weight of the IRS investigation, she could move to file for divorce, seeking sole custody of the children and attempting to launch one final, scorched earth memoir. This wouldn't be about truth. It would be about survival, a desperate attempt to generate enough cash to settle her mounting legal debts and the $3 million tax discrepancy. The second, and least likely path at 10%, is the prodigal son's return. This involves Harry admitting total defeat, leaving California alone, and seeking a quiet, sheltered life in a remote corner of the royal estate, perhaps a heavily guarded cottage at Frogmore, if his brother, William, allows it. But this path requires a level of humility that the last 7 years suggest may no longer exist. However, the most realistic path, with a 50% probability, is what we are calling the total collapse. By June 2026, the IRS is projected to move from investigation to enforcement. This means the immediate freezing of the Montecito mansion and all domestic bank accounts. With Harry's visa downgraded to a B2 status and the 30-day deportation clock ticking, he will be legally forced to exit the United States. Simultaneously, A new act of Congress currently being debated in Washington would strip Meghan of the right to use her foreign titles for commercial gain on American soil. The reason for this projected collapse is simple: economic gravity. The data for 2026 shows that the Sussex brand has reached a terminal value of 0. There is no more content to sell, no more secrets to trade, and no more billion-dollar corporations willing to risk their reputation on a couple viewed negatively by 80% of the public. They have become uninvestable, but as devastating as the financial and legal news has been today, the most terrifying revelation is still to come. As the High Court in London prepared to close its doors this afternoon, a final page from Tom Bower's navy blue folder was leaked to a select group of investigative journalists. It contains a detail that has reportedly sent a shockwave through the upper echelons of MI6. This is the piece of the puzzle that the Mediterranean files were truly hiding. It isn't about the money. It isn't about the drug admissions in Spare. It is about a single name found on the travel manifests of the Arawak and several other private vessels between 2014 and 2015. That name is Jeffrey Epstein. What was the nature of the connection between the future Duchess of Sussex and the Epstein network years before she met Prince Harry? How did a minor cable actress gain access to these specific circles? And who was actually funding those Mediterranean summers? The documents Tom Bower is holding don't just ask these questions, they provide the answers, including dates, locations, and the names of the decision-makers involved. We are currently verifying the final set of transcripts from this exclusive dossier. We will be releasing the full, unredacted breakdown of the Epstein connection and what it means for the future of the British monarchy at exactly 8:00 p.m. tomorrow. The House of Cards is no longer just wobbling, the foundation is being erased. Do not look away. Click the subscribe button right now and turn on all notifications. You need to be here when that video drops at 8 p.m. because once this information is public, the story of Meghan and Harry will never be the same again. Comment truth below if you are ready for the full disclosure.